Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of the Bitcoin News Show. I am your host, Vortex, and you guys are right here on the World Crypto Network YouTube channel, one of the best places around to find news and information about cryptocurrencies. We have an awesome and amazing show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about BCH, new all-time highs, BTC-E, ICOs. We're going to run the gamut here. We're going to try to keep this around an hour or two here at the most, but we're really excited. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We have an amazing panelist. Amazing group of panelists. But before we start introducing the panelists, just a couple of quick announcements. Just wanted to say congratulations to the World Crypto Network this week with the amount of views and the amount of stuff that came in. It was just amazing. We got called out by Mr. Max Kaiser himself. That was really great. So we were really happy and proud to reach those amounts of audiences, and we're really glad and humbled for you guys to join us. So we're really excited to talk more about Bitcoin here today. I just wanted to put it out there real quick. Me and several other people like Adam Meister and even Edward here that was on our last show, we were trying to tell people to look, stay calm. All the hodlers, just stay calm and hodl. With August 1st came and went, right? August 1st has come and went. Everybody is okay. Nobody. The chain is perfectly normal. Everything's good to go. It went off without a hitch. BIP91 was activated, and now SegWit will be locked in next Tuesday. So everything is going off amazing. Sure, of course, we got BCH out of it, right? But that's just a duplicate coin. We don't care much about that. Bitcoin did not split in half. We are good to go. So everybody is just really happy reaching these new all-time highs. And of course, we even have Vinny here who predicted the 3K of this year, and we have reached that 3K here. So awesome prediction by Vinny. And so let's go ahead and go through and introduce the panelists today. First, we have Mr. Gabriel D. Vine. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Hello, Internet. Hello, posterity. And special hello to We Smoke Bitcoins, who just donated $100 via the YouTube chat. Thank you so much, my friend. Looking forward to your questions. I'm sure we can get to them. Hey, thanks for having me, and great to be here with the rest of the panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabriel. And thanks again to all the people who are donating. We are really very much appreciative of it. We're going to use all of this to put back into the World Crypto Network to do all sorts of great things. We have new shows lined up, possibly a conference. We got all sorts of ideas coming, and we're really excited to share that with you guys. Then next, we got Mr. Edward here, Edward Renegade Investor. Edward, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show. It's good timing as well. Bitcoin all-time highs. What a weekend. It's great.
What a week, man. What a crazy week. We've had all sorts of amazing stuff. It's been absolutely nuts. So we have a lot to talk about here. I'm sure everybody is as thrilled as I am with these new all-time highs. I'm super excited. We got Mr. Richard Hart back again. Richard, how you doing?
I'm great when I can unmute. Yay, I'm unmuted. Hi, I'm doing great.
Awesome, man. Really glad to have you. The audience seems to keep asking for you back, so we're having you back. We love your opinion. And then our special guest for today, for this show today, we have Mr. Vinny Lingham of Civic. Vinny, thanks for joining us so much. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. We know you're a busy guy. I don't know if anybody has in the audience has seen Vinny's schedule, people, but my God, I'm just lucky to have him on the show. So thanks so much, Vinny. And of course, I think he's even on vacation, so we don't want to take too much of his time. We got 600 live viewers here right now and climbing. So let's go ahead and get started with the show. I'm going to ask the panelists some questions about the topics here. Going to go with Vinny first, the special guest always, and then we'll randomize after that. So first, it's been a crazy week. Everybody's super excited. We have finally the big blockers can go off and have their own chain now. So the market seems to be completely okay with that, with Bitcoin reaching new all-time highs. And so Vinny, let me ask you, did you get a chance to see the transaction malleability attack that happened with BCH today? And maybe what are your general thoughts about BCH and the recent transaction malleability attack?
I have not been up to speed on the malleability attack. I saw a tweet about it this morning. I only woke up an hour ago. I'm in Hawaii right now, so busy chilling out and just relaxing. Yeah, I mean, look, the BCH threat was one that I was concerned about, and I still am. I don't think it's all clear sailing just yet, as much as everyone thinks it is. I think there's a lot of propaganda that can go behind it, especially within China. There's a lot of demand that gets pushed from Bitcoin to BCH. Also, if BCH gets pumped by in number of people trying to push it up, and the price starts rising very quickly. And as much as we all want it, we're going to dump our BCH into the rise. There are some risks there, and I talk about a seesaw effect where if BCH goes up and Bitcoin goes down, what do the uninitiated do? Remember, there a very small percentage of the world that understands what Bitcoin is today, right? And there's a very large percentage of people out there who've heard of Bitcoin but don't know any real Bitcoiners. So if you tell them, BCH is Bitcoin, and they go to bitcoin.com and bitcoin.com is supporting BCH, they think that is Bitcoin. So these are the concerns I've always had around a fork, and you really see right now with some of the BCH branding that's coming out that they're calling it Bitcoin. And so these are my concerns around a hard fork. I mean, I think I've been a very big Bitcoin bull for many years, up until March this year when all this started coming out, Bitcoin Unlimited, etc. And I've been opposed to a hard fork for months, 6 months now. And it's happened. It looks like it's been okay. There's another hard fork coming by the looks of things with Segwit 2x. Let's assume that's all okay. And these hard forks turn out to be just, things which, A, get rejected by the community, and B, does not impact the demand for Bitcoin, then we're okay. But if that changes, then we have a problem.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we do expect, a lot of us here at the WCN expect there to be some more FUD and some more, BCH talk around the fork times, right? Around September, October. We do believe that that's going to probably dip the price a little bit and, cause some more worry in the markets for the speculators. But it does seem that we have at least 4 or 5 weeks of upside, possibly of smooth sailing, before we start having to deal with the 2x fork. And so what are your thoughts about the 2x, Vinny? Do you think that that's going to go through? Do you think that's going to create another fork? Do you think that it's going to not happen maybe until next year? What do you think?
So I think, look, the 2x fork is an interesting situation. There's no replay protection. There's no wipeout protection, right? So if that fork happens and 90% of miners are supporting that, and not just the miners. I mean, we have to look at the economic nodes. Who's going to go with it? And you look at the list of companies that have signed onto it. Are they upgrading to Segwit 2x? If they are, we're going to have a problem there. So I don't know. Look, I've said my piece. I've said what I have to say about hard forks and the dangers and risks to it. BCH one the risk has been minimal. They actually did have a replay and wipeout protection and pretty good one built into BCH. So we actually have effectively an alt that's been created, which is okay. It's happened. It's fine. It's part of Bitcoin. I think everyone recognized that. Segwit 2x doesn't have that, and I don't think people understand the difference. And I think that we have some more risks there. But again, assuming everything goes fine, and what happens to Segwit 2x, what happened to BCH, we're good. Bitcoin will keep going. But let's just assume that doesn't go the way that we expected to go, and now Core has to go, to maintain Bitcoin, Core has to go do an emergency hard fork for difficulty and proof of work changes. Then we have the Core chain, which is going to be Bitcoin. We have the Segwit 2x chain. Which one's the alt? Which one's the main one? Especially if there's a proof of work change in the Core chain. So that's a question I've still got.
Yeah, and I think we're all still waiting to find out what happens. I mean, like I was saying, I mean, the second half of the year is going to be really exciting because now we live in this post-fork world, right? So before the fork, everybody was, there's a bunch of fear and a bunch of people, being scared about what would happen. But now we live in this post-fork world where the market seems to be okay with having Bitcoin and, possibly other forks because, we hit new all-time highs. The market seems to have processed the fork as just another altcoin. So, right. So,
but there's no reorg that's possible with BCH and BTC. With the Segwit 2x, there is a reorg that's possible there because there is no wipeout and replay protection. I'd like to get other panelists' view on this. I mean, let's just assume that there is the hard fork does happen. What happens then?
Absolutely, yeah, and we hope that replay protection will be added because remember there wasn't any replay protection in BCH either in the beginning, and then they added a couple ones. They added an additional one, wasn't really good enough, and then they finally got a good one in there that was pretty rock solid, is what the rest of the developers would describe it as. So hopefully they'll add it in there at some point, right? I mean, they have enough time.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think the principle here is that Segwit 2x will not be adding replay protection or wipeout protection. That's the whole point. That's
Very
what they're trying
interesting.
to do.
I guess
So
why.
I'm on the mailing list, and I can tell you that that's not what is planned.
Very interesting. Okay, so that's going to make it even more interesting, people, if the Segwit 2X does not have replay protection in it. So let's go to Gabriel to see what his thoughts are on this. So Gabriel, I mean, what are your thoughts so far on BCH this week, and Vinny's comments so far in the conversation?
A quick shout out to Alexandre Leici, try to pronounce it right, from Brazil. Thanks for your couple reals. So I was of the opinion that there would be no hard fork during the ASIC boost scandal, and really for the last couple of years with most of the posturing around Bitcoin XT, but Bitcoin Classic. And it wasn't until Bitcoin Cash, Bcash, was announced about a month ago, I believe it was, that I thought, okay, these guys are actually serious about a hard fork on the table. And of course, I'd like to note that via BTC had not really been behind a specific effort for a hard fork. It wasn't until that announcement that I thought, oh, okay, actually they are going to do it. And I thought that it reeked of desperation. And at no point was I worried for the future of real Bitcoin and the consensus around segregated witness going live on the main chain. I knew that it would be an altcoin from the very start, and that's why I immediately called for all-time high this summer post-fork. And it happened a little faster than I thought it would, only 3 weeks later. But here we are, well above 3,000. And I'm not surprised in the slightest. Now, the BIP 148 crowd, I thought that seemed a little aggressive, and I am of the opinion that that is the reason why via BTC hurried the fork on to August 1st. They were scared and were pushed into it quite early. They weren't really prepared. They weren't able to prepare the not only the whale backing for the fork, but also the marketing and really propaganda in support of this SegWit-less large block fork. And in my opinion, the base motivation for the Bcash fork was a disruption attack, a short-term disruption attack to the Bitcoin ecosystem, which they absolutely succeeded 100% at. However, even in the medium term, it will have virtually no effect on Bitcoin. And in fact, the anti-fragile characteristics of Bitcoin will already be coming into play. I mean, they already are now, but in the medium term, you're really going to see a lot of confidence flow into Bitcoin, the real Bitcoin, as a result of surviving this fork, and long term, even more so. So this is it's going to have the reverse effect. Most attacks on Bitcoin are of that nature, where you can do a spam attack and have a temporary effect, but then you just kind of push. You just kind of push large players into the space and increase the by decreasing the supply of block space and transaction throughput, you just kind of increase the interest in the space for large players. Spam attacks is only one example. 51% attacks, you change the incentives among the miners, thereby strengthening the mining ecosystem. And so this was a simple disruption and branding attack, as Vinny pointed out. I was never worried about that for any point on this particular hard fork, because from the very start, they were calling it something else. They weren't calling it Bitcoin, they called it Bitcoin Cash. And right away, people were like, well, the branding was so poorly done. While they did, as you pointed out, get replay protection into the code base, they chose a ticker symbol that was already taken by a top 10 crypto, BitConnect, which unfortunately for them, they saw a big sell-off by accident. A lot of people getting confused. It hurt BitConnect a lot more than it hurt Bitcoin. And I think that's just another example of the desperation we saw there. Now, regarding the 2x with SegWit hard fork in November, this takes so much steam out of that by providing yet another alternative to the big block crowd. Once again, I'm going to predict, I'll point out I was wrong last time about the hard fork. I would say I was half wrong. I called that the current crowd that was behind, SegWit non-activation would not particularly be behind a hard fork, and it's questionable whether it's the same parties. I'm going to call again that they will chicken out on the hard fork in November because they won't be able to get enough support for it. However, they may go through with it, but I once again predict that real Bitcoin will trundle on with 1 megabyte blocks through November, and surely at least another year before we start to hear rumblings due to spam attacks and genuinely increasing transaction volume for larger blocks. However, it might take 4, 5, or even more years. If you look at the Bitcoin fees right now, they're at a multi-month low, very low. You can send multi-sig transactions for well under $1 worth of Bitcoin right now, despite the price rise. Fees are extremely low because now that some of the network has broken off, some of the traffic is moving over into BCH slightly. I think it's more just all the spam attacks have dropped off, and they're all pushing their spam attack money, the budget that they placed into spam attacks over the previous year, 2 years. Now they're placing directly into buying BCH and supporting the price. They're trying to keep it above 200 right now. It's not going to work. They're not going to be able to peg it. It's going to keep dropping and dropping and dropping, just like almost all other altcoins, just how those charts look. Now, somebody might try to pump it at various times, try to come up with a few million and manipulate the market, do some shorts, do some tricks here and there, but it's just another doomed altcoin. So the fees are low. Transaction throughput is stable at about 5 transactions per second, but we only need about 1.5, 2 right now still. Now with SegWit going live, we're going to have a lot of traffic moving off-chain over the coming 18 months as the new infrastructure is built, software infrastructure, Lightning Network. So I think we're looking at 2.5 to 3 years before we start even considering a block size increase. And even then, conservative elements in the Bitcoin ecosystem may kibosh it.
Yes.
One last point I wanted to make is none of what's gone on with Bitcoin Cash or Bcash is a surprise as a result of very intelligent decisions made by Satoshi Nakamoto right in the beginning. The block time, the difficulty period length. These are very important incentive structures that were specifically chosen in order to prevent hard forks from attacking the network and being able to take over. And right now, the difficulty shenanigans that have been attempted are keeping Bcash afloat, but they're absolutely preventing any sort of takeover. And I repeat my assertion that Bcash is a doomed altcoin.
All right, well, a lot to unpack there, a lot said. Gabriel, thanks so much for your opinions. I have to admit as well that I was wrong on the fork. I didn't think that they would actually fork because, nobody's been able to actually, fork Bitcoin and call it Bitcoin before. Nobody's done that yet. So I was wrong on that, but I was definitely right on Bitcoin being completely smooth, this being almost a non-event in terms of Bitcoin security and Bitcoin propagation and, just the blocks working. New blocks are continuing to be found. Everything is going off without a hitch. So very, very interesting. Let me just first introduce John here real quick, Mr. Bitcoin Error Log. I don't know if you'll be able to, we've been having some technical difficulties. We'll see if you can unmute John for an introduction. John, how you doing, man?
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Awesome. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that was a pain in the ass.
Glad to hear you, John. Glad to hear your voice. Thanks so much for being here. Just a couple other things too. Before I move on to the next person. BCH is. We're also finding out that BCH is mining empty blocks right now, and that's usually indicative of ASIC boost, right? So they're probably using ASIC boost on that chain in addition to trying to get it to work just regularly, because we've seen that there's been a transaction malleability attack on it already, and they were down for a while. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll get the rest of the panelists information. But yeah, Gabriel, you said a couple of years until a fork. Maybe that seems a little bit long to me, just because Bitcoin moves fast, right? I mean, I try to tell people this, that we are in early days and Bitcoin moves fast. So I think that maybe we can start talking about as early as next year. Because the core developers, still they have done a lot of research on it already, and they're more than willing to definitely do it eventually. So I think that perhaps that might be next year. But like you said, I mean, we have a lot of stuff to do. We still got Schnorr signatures. We still got to get SegWit activated. There's still other things. There's fiber, that needs to work on. So there's other stuff that the core will be working on to scale Bitcoin. So we're going to find out how that goes.
Yeah, we have transaction malleability. Fungibility, where we have anonymity, fungibility stuff is going to be a lot of that stuff's coming next in the core blockchain. And I agree, the conversations will surely be heating up next year on the block size increase.
Absolutely. So next we'll go with Edward, and then after Edward, I think we'll go with John. So or actually Richard. So John, we'll have you go last for this time, and we'll have you go first. The next topic. So first, Edward. What are your thoughts so far, man, on the conversation so far, on BCH, on what's going on with BCH and the conversation so far? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so from an investment perspective, I'm absolutely glad that we've got past August 1st. I'm so glad that SegWit has been activated. I said many times that I think the fact that we hadn't sort of had a solution to the scaling debate for a couple of years was one of the biggest gray clouds overhanging the market. And I think one of the most important things as well, which I've talked about on a couple of shows before this one, leading up to August 1st, was the fact that were the original sort of gangsters, the original people that invest in Bitcoin, going to risk the main value proposition of Bitcoin with a contentious hard fork? And I think going forward, the reason this is so bullish is the fact that we now know that those people with the most online in Bitcoin are not going to risk the main value proposition of Bitcoin, which is its consistent finite store of value, and the fact that you don't have sort of multiple contentious implementations of the core protocol. In addition to that, I think the market is telling us that it's happy with the outcome. I mean, obviously we've had a big rally in Bitcoin, up sort of 10-15% to a high of $3,340. And one thing that we could see going forward is a branding war. I'm well aware of that. There's going to be a lot of sort of reasons on the sort of BCH side of them wanting to try and capture that sort of market, saying that they are the Bitcoin or, a version of Bitcoin. But I think as long as education comes in now in order to sort of try and have some clear defining lines between what I believe is sort of the main implementation of Bitcoin, which is the Bitcoin which has the core management team, and that roadmap going forward, I think it's down to education now to try and drive a line between sort of Bitcoin and what I consider BCH as an altcoin. So I think we want to see that going forward. But the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sort of, one thing that I've made mistakes in the past is a lot of people, they say, Bitcoin's dead or Bitcoin's dying. I'm not going to do the same with BCH. I was listening to Trace Mayer recently on Crusher Street, and he said, don't bring your politics to your portfolio. And I still believe that we could see a rally in BCH. The reason for that is that it's got a very high volume. And that's all the speculators want. Speculators will trade anything with a pulse. And if it's got high volume as well, they'll definitely start trading it. And, if we get a turnaround in the price, maybe once Bitcoin's finished its sort of breakout run here, maybe up to the 4,000 mark, then, I think BCH could turn around and rally, especially if the momentum traders jump back in. So I'm not going to sort of dump my BCH at the moment, but I'm just going to wait and see what the market does. But in my opinion, I'm so bullish on Bitcoin right now. I think we finally got a solution to the scaling debate, and yeah, I'm going to wait and see what happens. But it's so nice. For the first time, I think that I really feel that for the first time, I'm so comfortable with where Bitcoin is, what it is. I don't think there's any sort of existential threats at the moment to the main value propositions and fundamentals behind Bitcoin, and I think the price can go much higher from here. So I'm just waiting to see what happens. And in regards of a hard fork in later this year, I honestly don't think there's it's going to be like anywhere near the sort of maximum transactions in blocks in order to try and push the narrative that we need to fork right at that time. We could see like what we saw before August the 1st with a lot of sort of transaction spamming to try and fill those blocks, but I really don't think we are going to fill them by November in order to support the narrative that we need to fork there and then. So, you know, if we do in the future, like we'll have to approach that at the time, but I really don't think it's going to happen in November. That would be my guess.
Very interesting. Thanks so much, Edward. Let's go to Richard. Richard, your thoughts on BCH and SegWit 2X and the conversation so far?
Hey, everybody. Richard Hartwin on Twitter. So I think that BCH, BCC, Bitcoin ABC, Bitcoin Trash Can Fire is a terrible piece of shit. And you can't have a good thing that has one dev and brand and doesn't have its own logo. It doesn't have any technical additions at all. It's literally just a fork with a fork of a wallet and a Wix website and one French dev. It's fucking terrible, right? Now, as terrible as it is, if it doesn't get attacked and if SHA-256 miners don't, it's probably still more secure than Ethereum because you're not going to lose money to a smart contract on it, because it doesn't do smart contracts, right? So even as shitty and terrible as the Trash Can Fire BCH is, it's still safer to hold money in than Ethereum, unless you consider its, you know, retail trading value, which has gone from, I think, when you could start making deposits on exchanges, it looked like 40% of a Bitcoin down to, I guess, 6% of a Bitcoin now, which is a pretty big problem. And, you know, you have to understand in this space that knowing which thing is technically the best doesn't have shit to do with its market value. You know, right now that does declarative smart contracts that are much harder to fuck up because they use normal English true false statements with like oracles that are built in, and nobody knows about it. You know, it's like number 30 in the market cap list, you know, and it doesn't have blocks. It uses a distributed acrylic grid, which means that you don't have like block war debates, and it has a whole bunch of other neat shit. Like, you know, it already works on every single device. That thing is only a number 30, but the Bitcoin fork that has no technical innovation whatsoever is like number 3 or 4. There's not a lot of rationality assigning value to the things that technically deserve it in this space. So you'd almost want to put 2 columns. One, does this have technical merit? Is it secure enough to not just blow up? Which it seems like not that many things are blowing up. Like Ethereum seems to be the only thing that's really getting wrecked. Everything else seems to be oddly secure, even the exchanges. I mean, the only exchange that went down recently was BTC-E, and they had that a long time coming for years, dealing as dirty as you could, I guess. So, you know, even the exchanges seem a lot safer than you would have guessed 2 years ago. The other altcoins seem a lot safer than you would have guessed. When's the last time you heard of someone running with the money even? I mean, it's weird. Like, I don't know whether the scammers are just so rich that they don't have to scam as hard as they used to, you know?
It's definitely interesting. You know, a lot of people are writing off, especially people like Tone Vase, right? They're writing off BCH right away. But, you know, what I have to agree with Vinny a little bit. You know, I don't think that we need to completely write it off completely right now, because, you know, if somebody like some large player, some large big blocker got behind it, right, then they could definitely start doing some interesting things. But again, you know, to me, that's not long-term hurting Bitcoin, right? That's just more FUD, more hurdles that Bitcoin's going to have to get after, and more, you know, walls of worry it has to climb. But sorry, go ahead, Richard.
I forgot to mention that, like, the whole reason we have proof of work is to make us safe, right? And the whole reason we worry about 51% of tax is to make us safe. And the whole reason that other cryptos use alternate proofs of work is to reduce the chance that somebody that has more mining equipment goes and just shits on them, right? So the reason that all the other altcoins like Litecoin don't use SHA-256 is because an angry Bitcoiner miner could go SHA-256 attack their network, and they couldn't afford to defend themselves. And so it's very interesting to me that this BCH hard fork uses the SHA-256 proof of work, which means that, sure, they can get some miners on board to help mine some blocks so that it actually works. But it also means that some miners could just shit their network apart, right? And reorg it and, you know, deposit money to an exchange, make a withdrawal, and then reorganize the blockchain 6 blocks later so that it never happened, right? So like, I haven't thought about it deeply, but it would be interesting to see what a motivated attacker with SHA-256 hardware could and may do to the BCH network, because that's the downside of using the same proof of work as another coin that's got 10 times as much hashing power, right? So your hashing power equals your market value of your coins, period, right? Like, I don't remember P equals MV or something. It basically means that the value of gold, the amount of money people will spend to mine gold will always equal the value of gold. And the amount of money that people will spend to mine Bitcoin will always equal the value of Bitcoin. So 10 times larger Bitcoin SHA-256 that can go and fuck up this little network. And I'm curious to see if it happens or not. And I don't know what they could possibly do to prevent it.
Yep, very true. Before we go to John with a point, Vinny, did you have something else to add?
Oh, no, I'm good. I was just
Okay.
I was agreeing with you. I think that it's been a couple of days. BCH is live. I mean, look, BCH. It's not. To me, it's not clear that it's a small one-man show operation doing it. I think it's a lot more than that. So I think we should be vigilant about what is happening out there and not take it for granted that it's dead. I mean, it's still sitting at the 3rd or 4th largest coin in the market right now, and people can argue about liquidity all day long. But
it's been 4 days. It's been 5 days. Meaning still. I'll talk to you in a month. We'll see what's going on then.
Well, hey, can I always come back?
Trade on BCH than BT, as far as I know, 24, 40 hours. People selling this, and it still hasn't gone up to $1. Why?
Well, I guess I do agree with Gabriel. It has only been a week so far, but we have a long ways to go until the 2x, because of course only a couple of months.
Reasons.
Yeah, only a couple months.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gabriel. Go ahead.
Vinny, there's 2 big reasons why it hasn't gone down that much. One, it's extremely inconvenient and difficult to split one's coins and sell them still. The selling pressure has only just barely begun. We're seeing the first automated scripts to do the splitting and selling. Secondly, they lined up a bunch of money to support the price. As soon as that money is out, all the selling pressure went out over the buying pressure. There's no way to launch an altcoin without a bunch of whales behind it.
Agreed. No, I agree with you on that. My question is, how much money have they lined up for this? Do you know? Do any of us know? Is it supported by government? Is it supported by high-net individuals? Is it supported by hedge funds? We don't know, and until we don't know, we should just be a little bit more, cautious about writing it off. I'm not saying that it's going to go to the moon. I'm just saying that for some reason this thing hasn't tanked as far as everyone expected it to tank yet. It's still the 4th largest out there. Yeah, maybe it's just my sort of.
Whoa.
No, it's true though. Like,
that's not true at all. Everyone knew that technically it would take quite a while for the liquidity to appear and stuff.
Gabriel, I got to disagree with you there. Both myself and people like Tone. I mean, we expected that to tank a lot quicker. But remember, with the blocks becoming so slow, right? Only 4 to 6 hours, and then every time a block comes, then it's sold. We didn't take that into account. So that's another big reason why it's taking a long time for the sell-off. It's taking forever to mine these blocks because of the difficulty rate. So, and there seems to be miners that are mining BCH for the specific reason of keeping the difficulty up, so that it remains unprofitable to mine BCH. So that's another part. So remember, we still got a long time to go, Gabriel. So I mean, it could still be going down for a while. And then again, remember, if it does go down to what everybody thought it would be, like $5, well, then somebody could come back in, somebody like Roger maybe, and come back and pump it in and some more FUD. But again, I just don't think that will affect Bitcoin in almost any way, because by that time, the market will have understood what's BCH and what's Bitcoin. But we'll have to see how it goes. John's trying to get a point in here. I gotta let John speak. John, please tell us what you think about this so far.
Okay, a few points. So first, as Richard was talking about, how some altcoins don't use SHA-256 because of fear of attack, because of so much mining power out there. I think there's an alternative view to look at, which is the same people that are mining this Bcash are the same majority of the current SHA-256 representing hash power anyway. So they don't have no fear of being attacked because they are the people that would do the attack. But I think there's also an alternative reason why they may be supporting this chain and why they may be putting money behind it, which is if there's a secondary coin that supports the same hashing algorithm, it creates a very nice support system for an aftermarket for mining hardware. So, and not only does that mean that you'll have a longer life and usability for mining hardware if there is another coin that people can use to mine it with, but it also makes buying new hardware an easier decision. So overall, it supports the entire industry that they're involved with, because the same majority hash power are also the same people manufacturing the mining machines. So it works out really well if they can pump enough money in to keep this coin alive. However, I don't think that anything has been proven yet. I think that the price has been falling every single day. Nothing has proven that this coin is going to live. I mean, keep in mind, even traders can keep a shitcoin alive for years. I mean, you can look at Dash, you can look at things like this. They're still holding $200 value with high market caps, and nobody's using these things. They're all just speculative trading devices, you know. And I think that Bcash could live in that context, but it doesn't mean it will be useful. It doesn't mean it's competing with Bitcoin. It's just another altcoin. As far as you know, SegWit2x, which I think was part of the topic, I think that I don't know if the fork will happen. It's interesting that Adam Back made a really cool tweet pointing out how Bcash kind of already is what they're trying to do. You know, it doesn't have SegWit, but they're giving the big blocks, and we're seeing how the market is pricing big blocks. It's going down every day. It's under $200 right now. As soon as liquidity opens up, it's going to get even worse. I don't like the way the people are managing S2X, because if you go in there, you know, we were talking about replay protection in the chat. They're against any kind of changes or oversight that would help keep the original chain alive. I think that's why, you know, if you read this mailing list, you'll see their behavior. They're very much in this delusional state where they're like, there's no way the old chain will live. Everybody's just going to migrate to the SegWit2x chain. And that's just simply not the case. You know, the first major Bitcoin fork, well, it's not the first anymore, is always going to have a surviving chain. You know, you look at Ethereum Classic, it's just something that you know is going to happen because people will support it just for the novelty of it. You know, and now you see Bcash doing things like on Reddit today, they made a Zcash version of Bcash, so people would stop calling Bitcoin Cash Bcash, because what's important to them is taking the brand. You know, Renegade mentioned earlier that there could be a branding war, and really that's the only danger here with any of these forks, in my opinion, is that if somebody puts enough money behind causing brand confusion to new people in the market, it could be a real issue with when somebody wants to get into Bitcoin, getting into the right Bitcoin, or which Bitcoin is the right Bitcoin. Right now, though, I don't think there is any confusion. I think the only people that give a shit or know anything about Bcash know it's not Bitcoin. And it's not a noob problem. It's just another altcoin. It's a money grab, free money. Keep selling it.
Isn't it odd that the same people? I mean, much of this stuff is like spooky boogeyman stuff with like little to no evidence, but I'll play along. It sounds like fun. So if it is the case that SegWit2x is Jeff Garzik, Ver, and Jihan Wu together, and it is also the case that Ver and Wu at least are on board along with all of BTC.Reddit, apparently, with this other thing, then they'd have to steal the brand twice, right? They'd have to steal the Bitcoin brand first for their BCH, then they'd have to steal it again for their SegWit2x. So it seems like it doesn't make sense.
Hold a second here. So what Ver is threatening is that if SegWit2x doesn't go forward with the hard fork, that he'll throw his weight to Bitcoin.com and anything else behind Bcash.
But he already did. You already.
To me, that's evidence that Ver probably sold all his Bitcoins already at some point. You know, if he's willing to make threats to move Bitcoin.com to something else, I think it's just evident that he's not really thoroughly invested.
I don't know about that. Something tells me that Ver has a lot of Bitcoin left, but sorry, we'll have to see. Edward, you had one more point to make as well. Please go ahead.
Yeah, like just quickly on that point though, I don't think Ver's sold his Bitcoin. Like he actually did an interview the other day with, I forget her name, but like a really influential Japanese lady. I think everybody's probably seen it. And but the one thing I'll say about that was he actually said in that interview that he'll continue to use a chain that provides the most value. So he was like pretty definitive that he wasn't sold on any one idea. And you know, he's got so much money riding in Bitcoin. Like, he's not going to chuck it away into something if he doesn't think it's going to work. I don't think he's that stupid to do that. But the one point I wanted to make, which actually John C. touched on before got to me, is the fact that a lot of people in Bitcoin make the mistake of looking at the fundamentals of a coin in order to determine its market value. But I'm telling you now, like, I'm in a fairly big trading group, and traders cannot wait to trade this coin because it's liquid, it's volatile. There could be a ton of momentum traders jumping in order to get the big swings in this market. And the fact that you have traders, the fact you have also the possibility of whales getting involved with their money, I'm telling you, there's a lot of people waiting to trade this market. And that's why I don't think this war is going to instantly sort of, this coin is just going to die. I really think that once we bottom out and we get a period of accumulation, I wouldn't be surprised to see this jump again. I'm not sure if we'll see the highs that we saw last time where it went to like almost like 50% of Bitcoin at 0.5, but I could easily see like another ramp up here. Whether we do or not, we have to wait and see. Like, that's the risk I'm going to personally take. But it's almost like every market does get a pump. It does get a bull market at some stage. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this pump. And that doesn't mean I'm in support of it. It doesn't mean I think it's good. But from an investment and trading perspective, I wouldn't just write it off straight away and dump right at the bottom. Like, obviously, it's up to people what to do. I don't give advice. But it's like we saw with Ethereum Classic when it forked off from Ethereum as well. Like, everybody dumped it into sort of the gutter based on their sort of ideological perspective, and then bang, it just ramps up. So I think that's the sort of thing that we could see if traders get involved here, and there's possibly some people supporting it in the background as well.
I do want to mention that I think that Bitcoin Cash is probably the biggest reason for real Bitcoin going up in price this past week. People just selling their Bcash and turning it into Bitcoins.
Can I say Roger's never getting out of Bitcoin because he can't, even if he wanted to, because he has minority shareholder positions in a shitload of Bitcoin companies, and those don't really have liquidity so much. So even if he dumped every single real liquid coin that he had, he still got shares in BitPay and blockchain and a shitload of other stuff I don't feel like remembering. He's all over the Bitcoin space, and he's not getting out of it anytime.
It's really hard for me to believe that he has a lot of Bitcoins with how much work he puts into keeping the price down.
That's probably how much coin he actually has. But well, real quick, I definitely agree that the branding war is really only a short-term thing. That's just not a long-term thing. That's something that Bitcoin, in my opinion, can shrug off really easy. And then just real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of these people that are donating. Thank you guys so much for Dame Eugen, I'm going to butcher that name. David Hill, B4, and of course, We Smoke Bitcoins. Thank you guys so much for the donations. We appreciate it. Absolutely. I want to let Vinny ask a question to John, because Vinny's still not getting an answer to his question here, and I want to get this answer. So Vinny, please ask John real quick, and then if anybody wants to comment after that. But go ahead, Vinny.
Okay, so again, this is the hypothetical question. If for example, SegWit 2x doesn't add wipeout protection, replay protection, etc., and there is a hard fork that does happen, and Core has to do a fork to protect the original chain and then change the proof of work in the process, which is the original coin, and which exchanges will support them, and I'm still not clear on what.
All right, none of that is going to happen. First of all, there's no question what the original coin is. We all know it. It's easily identifiable. Whether there's replay protection or not, there's nothing that's going to happen. If they do really hold to their guns and not have replay protection, what will probably happen is a core developer will add it to their repo, or try to add it. It will get rejected, and then they'll make their own version, and then they'll probably do a better job getting people to install their version of SegWit 2x that includes replay protection, and then it will be up to the kind of business supporters of SegWit 2x to do the right thing. They'll take it out of the hands of Jeff Garzik, and they'll put it in the hands of people like Coinbase, and now Coinbase will have to be the person deciding to say, am I going to run the version of software that's safe for all parties involved, or am I going to run the one that's hostile? And Coinbase doesn't want to have lawsuits. You saw what happened when they said they weren't going to render any Bcash to people. They came back and they said, oh, we're going to have to. We don't want to have to deal with all that bullshit. And that's another good thing that came with this Bcash fork, which is, I think what exchanges are going to learn as a result of this is that they have to change their systems to be dedicated wallets for their users and provide private keys so they can remove themselves from the forking choice situation and whether or not to support this coin or that. It'll just be a decision of when they want to add a market for a new coin, whether it's a fork or not, and no longer a concern as to whether they're going to help people fork the coin for them.
Interesting. Vinny, do you have anything to follow that, or?
No, I just don't think I don't think it's very clear. I think it's a very murky situation right now. I mean, you see Adam back emailing the Sego2x list. John, I think you're on the list as well, back and forth and talking about these things. The Sego2x is going on, back and forth.
I actually asked them to remove me from the list. I couldn't take it anymore. The people that are programming that thing are so bullheaded. They're such asses. It's like ridiculous. I really recommend other people check out the mailing list to see how these people are actually behaving and responding to like real peers giving them real review. It's obnoxious.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's change the topic. I think my whole point was that my biggest fear this year has been hard fork. And I think that we can see from the BCH hard fork, that's more of an altcoin forking off. I think it's a little bit more murky with Sego2x. I don't think it's clear it's just an altcoin forking off, depending on how it's done with the current risks. Obviously, if Apple adds replay protection on their side or wipe protection on their side, and they can do that, then that's fine. But these just, we only have a couple of months left, a couple of weeks left before this starts becoming an issue. And as we saw what happened with exchanges not supporting BCH, that's also a massive business disruption issue right now that has to be dealt with. That said, I think we can all be comfortable that it's been at least been proven that the confusion from the market with the rebranding of a new coin hasn't quite spilled into the mass market media just yet, and Bitcoin itself is fine right now.
I'd just like to point out that this Sego2x movement is a completely top-down political endeavor. Now, politics is not foreign to Bitcoin, of course. All the consensus is a political process that's, in a relatively ad hoc basis. But Sego2x was a completely top-down, corporate-backed political operation. And whether they'd like to recognize that or not, that is directly counter to the ethos of the Bitcoin ecosystem and the general users. People tend to underestimate the general intelligence level of the existing Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm not talking about potential marketing of, bringing in mass audiences and things. I'm just talking about the people that are holding coin, the mining CTOs, the actual players that are controlling the flow of coin, the whales, the traders. These people are not stupid. They are extremely savvy, if not directly savvy and direct Bitcoin contributors. So the type of adjudication that such individuals make is based not only on their technical knowledge, but also, as John just pointed out, on social signaling. You can read between the lines of tweets, mailing lists, the type of propagandic methods that are undertaken by governments and corporations on a regular basis in order to pull the wool over the eyes of the general population tend to completely fall flat on their face and have the exact opposite effect with Bitcoiners. And that's one of the, I just want to point out that there's a social reason for the incentives not lining up as well for a Sego2x fork, where the confusion caused by a branding attack to Bitcoin that prompts, for example, a proof of work change, the political power and economic power of the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is so extremely anti-authority, could very much work in the opposite favor of a Sego2x hard fork.
Yep. John, did you have one last comment and before we move on to the topic, or? Okay, cool. Well, yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic then. Thank you guys so much for the commentary. It's absolutely great so far. Thank you guys in the chat. Thank you. See who we got now. Thank you, Bitsby Trippin, for donating $100. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We got over 1,260 live viewers right now. So We are absolutely having a great time here. I have a great panel. Thank you guys again so much for joining. Hopefully we can go a little bit longer with Vinny. I'm not sure how much time Vinny's got left, but we're gonna try to move on to the next topic. So before we do that, guys, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you guys are new, please go ahead and subscribe to the World Crypto Network YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up so we can get into more people's views. Odds are we're probably trending live right now on YouTube Live. I haven't checked the link. If somebody wants to check that, go ahead. We've been doing that a lot this week, trending live, being #1 trending live in technology. So let's move on to the next topic real quick. That is Bitcoin reaching new all-time highs. Maybe this isn't a topic, but we've already reached new all-time highs, but I just really am so excited. I want to get everybody's opinion. I want to get the thoughts of what everybody's thinking right now, because $3,000 of Bitcoin, to me, that's a large psychological milestone. Tone Vase didn't really agree with me on that too much, that it wasn't such a big psychological milestone, but to me it's huge. I'm just absolutely thrilled, and I want to hear from the panelists about this. So first, Vinny, let's ask you, and of course you had this prediction. I believe you predicted this last year, that we will have a 3K Bitcoin this year. So Vinny, tell me, how's it feel to have that come true? And then how are you feeling about this time? Are you worried, or are you euphoric, or are you still cautious? Or how are you feeling?
I mean, look, I think last year when I wrote my post in May of last year saying that Bitcoin will hit 1,000 last year, 3,000 this year, it was pretty clear that there was enough demand being built up, and there was enough progress being made in the ecosystem. I think when it came down to all the fun in March around hard forks, etc., I was a bit more concerned that a hard fork would result in us not hitting 3K. We got the hard fork out of the way, and we broke 3K. So that's it was a non-event, which is great. Waiting from here, I don't know. I mean, I think it's looking like it's going to be strong and upward. I mean, obviously people are cashing out of BCH and buying Bitcoin, so that's creating new momentum for Bitcoin, and especially as people are able to get their BCH out of their Bitcoins. I don't know. I think I've always been more of a fan of slow and steady growth, but calling it 8x up in a year, just over a year and a bit, it's pretty eye-popping growth. And can we continue to do that for years and years? I mean, some would argue, sure, we can do 8x every single year, and so go from 3 to 24 to 160 to $1 billion in 3 years. I think it's kind of unrealistic, right? So the curve's got to slow down over time. Just law of large numbers. You can't get to a point where Bitcoin's worth $1 billion in 3 years. Maybe it is. I just don't see how it's possible.
Well, I tell you, I think the rest of us are really excited about the halvings, right? Every 4 years, it has to at least double, right, from wherever it is. So I think that's kind of built in. I think that incentive in Bitcoin has been successfully working for the past 8 years pretty well, because we've been definitely more than doubling every couple of years, so every 4 years. So.
No, the halving was a big event even last year. I mean, again, part of my thesis last year was the halving would increase the price of Bitcoin and reduce the rate of inflation of Bitcoin has become it's lower than 5% right now, which is amazing. And within another less than 3 years, we'll have another halvings, and it's going to go down even further. So you get to the point where Bitcoin is very, very stable in terms of new coins coming on the market, and that supports the price ultimately for the long term. So barring any technical issues and glitches, Bitcoin is the asset class to hold over the next decade easily.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's great to hear. It's just weird, Vinny. A lot of people like to say that, you diss Bitcoin and things like that. But I mean, all of to me, you do your best to make logic, to take logic and to explain it easily to people, to newcomers and stuff. I mean, we can't be right every single time, but I mean, you are a successful entrepreneur in this space, and I have, the deepest respect for you. So I'm just glad, that you're here, and I'm glad to have you keep being so bullish on Bitcoin. I mean, I think that you really are a true believer of Bitcoin, like the rest of us here on this panel.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've been to Bitcoin since late 2012. So from let's say 2013 January 1st to now, we're talking about a run of what, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Okay, a bit. I've been a bull for many, many years. I've been a bear for 4 months. The amount of hate I get is probably more than Roger Ver.
Yeah, I guess it is difficult to be a bear in this space for very long. The community will probably get you at some point. So let's go with Richard next on this topic, man. These new all-time highs. How are you feeling about this? Has this got you more excited than ever, or are you cautious? How are you feeling, Richard?
I'm oddly upset. I really didn't think we were going all-time high, you know, and because I'm a holder, I can be wrong, and that's fine. Like, but I like being right, and I thought that there were a lot of things that were, you know, not positive going on, and I was 100% wrong, and happy to be wrong. You know, I'm glad to see these all-time highs because, you know, as soon as my opinion is, as soon as the institutional money gets in, the sky's the fucking limit, because the 1% holds all the wealth of the world, and the 1% doesn't really have a taste of Bitcoin yet. And so if the 1% doesn't really have a taste, then you're missing out on the majority of the world's wealth. And currently, Bitcoin's actual use case is as store of value. And the people that have all the value, well, they're not us. They're not in the chat room, right?
Yep. Go ahead, Vinny.
I agree with Richard. I think one of the other misconceptions was that I sold all my Bitcoins. I didn't sell all my Bitcoins. I kept a nice stash. I sold. I made a good gain on the bid. I sold a bit. I put in some other alts. I made some money on alts, which is great. But like, for me, it was I didn't have enough, a massive dent in my life, and people misunderstand that I didn't make my money.
You're breaking up there a little bit, Vinny.
So until I think, Vinny, your mic, your internet
Vinny.
connection is so shit right now that I think I'll support Vinny while he can't support himself till his net connection's up. Bitcoin is trustless and free, so you should be able to sell your coins whenever the fuck you want, and it should be anyone's business. And it's not your job to hold the bag for them, right? This market has enough liquidity that anyone on the chat should be able to dump, and everyone else can smile and be happy.
I'm in my niche business. I had a stash of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
so
I was.
Sorry, Vinny. Real quick, let me talk. You are breaking up a little bit. Maybe you can plug in, replug in, or something.
Yeah, I can't understand anything you're saying.
Yeah, but sorry, Vinny. So yeah, maybe if you could just try to disconnect and reconnect or something. Maybe you can disconnect, reconnect, Vinny. But real quick, what he was saying is, you know, like, people think that he sold all of his stash, but he of course did not sell all of his stash. Vinny's a smart guy, dude. He's got some Bitcoin, and of course he made a bunch back with Civic. So just a lot of people need to just let up on their hate a little bit. You know, I mean, Vinny's a Bitcoiner like the rest of us, and he's holding probably a lot more than any of us here on this panel, probably a lot more than me, I'm sure. So so I just wanted to get that clear out there. You know, so this is we're all in this together. We're trying to make Bitcoin successful, and you know, Vinny to me is a Bitcoiner, true and true. So we'll go with the next person on this topic here, which I believe was John. John, so I'd like to get your thoughts real quick on this, and while Vinny maybe can disconnect and reconnect, I don't know, we have to get his internet back. But John, please give us your thoughts on the new all-time highs and what you think, John.
Yeah, like as Vinny said, I've also been in Bitcoin since 2012, and I think that one thing that maybe he forgot when he was being bearish is that all the FUD is just FUD, and there's a lot of it, and it always comes, and it comes in cycles, and we always see them over and over. And the only thing you really need to know about Bitcoin is just to buy the fucking dip. You know, when the price is dumping and everybody is saying something, everybody is usually wrong. You know, there's a really good trader I know called I Am Nomad, and you guys should follow him on Twitter. And he makes a really great point that when the whole sentiment everywhere is concern and worry, you know, that's the best time to buy Bitcoin. When nobody wants Bitcoin, that's when you buy it. You know, and on the long term, it's just going to keep going up until there's really something that challenges something that we can't even predict, because, you know, until governments are really trying to kill it or something like that, you always just want to buy the dip, you know, trying to make, you know, and Richard was saying it's anybody's business when they sell and whatever. I mean, it's nobody's business. The difference with people giving Vinny a hard time is that he made it everybody's business by being an oracle. You know, he wanted to predict things. He wanted to make sure that, you know, he maintained this streak of having a blog and making good predictions, and then he predicted 850, and then things kind of went south from there. But in the end, you know, to be more positive, I am really glad to see Bitcoin break 3,000 to hit 3,300. I think we'll continue seeing consolidation. I do technical analysis myself, and, you know, I could see the 3,300 coming. I wasn't going to predict it because I don't want to, you know, tell people what to do or anything like that. But, you know, you can see these things are coming if you know what you're doing. I would stay away from trying to, you know, make predictions for the public, because that's always going to bite you in the ass. You know.
I think
Yeah,
I think
it's
you should
difficult.
reward people that take their balls in their hands and risk their public face to just be nice and share what they feel about a thing. So as long as you disclaim it and say, look, you know,
Sure.
I don't
Well,
want to
the
live in a
problem
world
is
where
that people
everybody's
start to
afraid to say the truth
confuse
because the
skill
public
with
will
luck,
punish them.
and that's dangerous.
I
Yeah,
didn't understand what you said. What skills with luck?
Sorry, the problem with making predictions to the public is the public, it's hard for them to discern between when you're being lucky and when you're being skillful. And you know, when you try to be an oracle and make predictions for people, they're ultimately going to be followed or persuaded by you. So it's a very dangerous power to wield, you know. And
Yep.
there is a difference between luck and skill.
Yeah, but it's not binary, right? If they weren't listening to him that has a decently educated opinion in the space as a technician and someone with a startup that's been successful and got retail adoption versus all the other fucking idiots they could listen to that have never done shit,
Right.
it's better that they at least get the better knowledge from the guy that knows a little bit better, even if he's still likely to be wrong, because predicting the future is inherently hard. If any of us could truly predict the future, we would all fucking bought Ethereum when it went 40x up at the same time, right? Like, but it shouldn't have, right? So like, anyway,
It's going to be really interesting to see some of the new technologies for tracking in a decentralized fashion predictions among different individuals, and really getting. There are actually some projects underway right now for creating reputation scores and things for all sorts of futures markets, prediction markets, predicting individuals. It's going to be really fun to see how those flesh out.
Yeah, very interesting. So let me let Vinny talk now. Vinny, so you broke up there a little bit. Please go ahead and finish what you were saying.
I just hotel Wi-Fi. I'm back. I'm using my phone now to tether, so LTE is actually better. Look, I mean, I never called myself a Bitcoin oracle. So the funny thing is, everyone gave me that term because everything. What I used to do is once a year I'd write a post of why I think Bitcoin is going to go sideways, for example, in 2013, and all the reasons why from a data perspective. From we're running Gift at the time, we saw what was happening there, and then I wrote, and then I led Run for like 18 months. I wrote a couple other posts around some shit coins as well. Why I thought shit coins were pump and dumping back in 2013 as well, and 14. And then I wrote a post called Bitcoin Awakens last year in May with all the reasons why Bitcoin is going to go through the roof, the short squeezes are going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And and invariably people ask me for a price target. What do you think? So I started throwing these out there and saying, well, look, this is where, look at the charts. This is where I think it's going to go. These are the numbers. This is based on velocity, et cetera. And then they started holding me to it. And then you get to this point where you're like, fuck, okay, if I make one mistake, I'm screwed. And I made one mistake, and then I get ostracized for it. And by the way, like my price target of like 850 was, it hit 880 on the way down from 1250, right? And so at that point, I thought it breaks 850. It was at 1250 when I wrote the post, and the market tanked after the ETF didn't come through. It went down. I think 888 was the number, across exchanges. So it actually got close to 850. At that point, I was like, look, if it breaks 850, that'll be like a new ceiling from a technical perspective, because 850 was a massive level of support. People misinterpreted that. But anyway, it did tank. I did not expect it to come back as quickly as it did. And afterwards, I've just basically been, kind of bearish on Bitcoin for the forks and all the other things I think could happen, the FUD, etc. And it's fine. It is what it is. And but if we go back to the fundamentals of where Bitcoin is today and where it's going, I think everyone can agree that it's in a very good space. I'm going to refrain from putting out price targets going forward. I don't think it's worth much at this point. But I will say that I'm going to continue to write stuff and on my blog, and I'm going to keep blogging things around where I think this space is evolving. Obviously, I have a lot more insight right now into ICOs and token sales and crypto and altcoins. And I think my most recent post I wrote now about how I think we've built an entire platform on Bitcoin. So if anyone's true to Bitcoin, it's me. Like, if Bitcoin goes down, Civic's not going to have a platform right now. We have to switch to a different chain. We are blockchain agnostic in the sense that we can move, but it's a bitch to move chains. Everything is built native to Bitcoin. So we're very much in the Bitcoin camp, and we want Bitcoin to succeed. But yeah, I have some insights into I think where Bitcoin forms a base level infrastructure for things like tokens and whatnot. And we're looking forward to RSK coming out soon, giving us the ability to, we issued an ERC20 token as a pre-token for Civic tokens, and we want to move that to RSK and put it onto Bitcoin and have those smart contracts merge mine on Bitcoin. So this is like, we're very bullish about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin actually plays out. I think people need to start looking one level up and realizing that Bitcoin is a very, very low-level protocol. If you think about it, and it should be. It should be very, very low-level and safe and secure and stable and reliable. And then what gets built on top of that? And I've been saying this for years. And so you look at what Ethereum has done with ERC20. That's very interesting. That can also be done on Bitcoin. And quite frankly, running the process we did for Civic, it was, in retrospect, I wish I hadn't used Ethereum. It was a total nightmare for us with payments. And the Bitcoin payments went through no problem, no issues. It was actually such a smooth process. And then I realized, like, going through that process, how Ethereum wasn't actually built for payments. It's not the same. It's good for other things. I mean, for smart contracts, it's great. For ERC20 tokens, it's great. But it's not a payment system. And the more you sort of get, when you take in 30-odd million bucks, or Ethereum is about half that. So, like, for $15 to $20 million in Ethereum payments in a day or in a couple of days, you realize that it needs a lot of work. But I like to see going forward how we can use Bitcoin as low-level protocol infrastructure for other things. So can you go and build private economies using tokens? And that's what we're experimenting right now. The whole token economy is a big experiment. But can Bitcoin be like an underlying layer that we can rely on and trust to power it? I think, and I'd love to chat about token economies in a bit if you want, but we can see how the conversation goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be the next topic, actually. After this is going to be the ICO stuff. Yeah, because that's I mean, it's important to understand. People, like, nobody has all the answers, and I think, and I definitely appreciate your info, Vinny. I definitely appreciate your articles, and I definitely appreciate the information, because the more information we have, the better, right? I mean, if we just had a bunch more different people writing articles, who are passionate about the space, that'd be great. But unfortunately, we get a lot of paid articles and a lot of news articles and crap. So it's great to have people like Vinny who are writing, Medium articles, and like Whale Panda and a bunch of other great people who are writing articles that we know are writing from passion, right? We know that they're not paid to write these articles. They're writing these articles because this is what they love. And so that's really, really important and really awesome to hear. And so let's go with Gabriel next on this, on what are you thinking about new all-time highs? And then we'll go to Edward. Go ahead, Gabriel.
So I will toot my own horn a little bit here and just mention that with a mixture of instinct and a slight amount of skill and a lot of luck, when the Bcash hard fork was announced, I did call that we would slide under 2,000, and but just privately to my friends. And I said, this is a great buy opportunity. And once we hit 1800s, I said, okay, this is, I think we're heading back up. And that was when I publicly called the all-time high for the summer. So I'm very rarely do I get a bearish call, but on this hard fork, I knew that it would be a temporary block as soon as the news, actually proliferated in the trading community, which took about 3 days. So I think that Edward is the best qualified to answer this question of anybody on the panel, but I just want to kind of mention, something that people don't talk about too often in crazy moonshot predictions for Bitcoin, possible Bitcoin prices. I think Tuur de Meester is possibly the first individual to have really laid out the just numeric money supply comparisons and market comparisons to the Bitcoin supply, and pointing out, early on that if only, for example, 1% of the offshore, storage of wealth in the world were to flow into the Bitcoin ecosystem, it would already create, a Bitcoin units of something like $2.5 million US. Then there's the gold supply, which currently, much wealth is stored in tens of trillions of dollars. If a couple percent of that went into the Bitcoin price, you're looking at least 6 figures. Add some of these together, some slight percentage of the M1, and you're just looking at upwards of 6 and 7 figures for a single Bitcoin. And I just want to mention something that people don't talk about that often. In addition to gobbling up chunks of the existing monetary uses in the world, the existing financial infrastructure of the world, replacing a lot of this debt-based economic activity with an asset-based replacement and taking over that value, Bitcoin enables huge amounts of economic activity. Of course, now with SegWit, it's even greater, but the possibilities for totally not even thought of areas of economic activity, including machine-to-machine payments, and just huge quantities of wealth creation for those of us who do understand Austrian economics or even just classical liberal economics, Adam Smith type of, John Law type of economics, classical 18th century economics. Wealth is created by, you know, these profit schemes of businesses providing value to consumers transacting with each other. These are all wealth creation activities. When you don't have a central authority drawing off the wealth with central banking scams, that wealth circulates in the economy and creates more wealth. So not only is Bitcoin sound money and will, you know, greatly increase the wealth of all the participants in the ecosystem, there's so many new use cases that will simply create tons of wealth that most of which say will stay in Bitcoin. So the sky is really the limit. It's absolutely incredible. I'm of the impression that we will continue this 0.331% daily exchange rate increase against the US dollar for many years to come. And what that means is millions per Bitcoin within 6 years, 5 years.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean, the upside, in my opinion, of course, is absolutely huge. We know that there's trillions of dollars in other markets like oil and gold and such, and so we just need just a little bit of that to flow into BTC. We'll see what Edward has to say. Edward really has a lot of great videos on this, about his predictions, about how altcoins will take over, or how Bitcoin will take over altcoins. And he's got a lot of great videos explaining this and new all-time highs and why we're at the new all-time highs. So just a reminder again, everybody needs to check out Edward's videos, Renegade Investor on YouTube. Edward, please go ahead and tell us your thoughts on new all-time highs, man. How you feeling? And give us that classic Edward overview.
Network effects. I want to hear your network effects, Edward.
Yeah. I can say thanks for the kind words, Gabriel and Vortex. But yeah, like anyone who's watched any of my videos knows that I'm probably one of the most bullish people in the space, and with good reason. Like everything that I see going on with Bitcoin, it's just at the birth of a new asset class. We've never had this for so long. I mean, I can't even remember the last time an asset class was created like this. So the upside potential is literally unprecedented. And I've done a lot of good videos on this. The one I did at the beginning of this year was called 10 Reasons Why Bitcoin Price Will Destroy All-Time Highs This Year. And now you can go and watch that. It's actually got 120,000 views now. So I think that really resonated with people. And the one thing I'll say about it is that 7 out of the 10 things I listed on there have now come to fruition with the addition of SegWit, which I said would be one of the most Bitcoin bullish events of the year if it was going to happen. And the reason for that is that for me, the scaling, like if I was going to put any sort of, as an investor in Bitcoin for the best part of 5 years, if I was going to put down one thing that I was worried about more than anything in Bitcoin, it was the fact that whether we can come to consensus on the scaling debate and whether the network can scale, because the future value of the network is based upon obviously Metcalfe's law and the ability for more and more people to use the network without massive delays and fee increases, you know? So that's like one of the main value propositions of Bitcoin, is that you can make it viable to as many people as possible. So for me, when I saw SegWit activated, I am more bullish on Bitcoin long-term now than I've ever been in 5 years. I'm more relaxed sitting in Bitcoin now than I have been in 5 years. And I can tell you, through like 2014, 2015, there were times where like your alarm goes off at 3 in the morning when the price is capitulated down to 160. And my friend was phoning me and we're looking at this going, what is going on? And, you know, times like that, you remember just flying by the edge of your seat, like literally day to day. And I would say that right now I feel more relaxed than ever holding Bitcoin. And that's not exaggeration, because I can really see that we're beginning to really resolve some of the main issues in Bitcoin. And in addition to that, another video I put out recently is altcoins versus Bitcoin, why Bitcoin's network effects will make it a monster. And I'm getting really good at just starting to ignore noise, and it helps when you've been in the space 5 years. But I just keep focused now on the main things that are going on, and the fact that Bitcoin has several network effects that I talk about in that video that just a lot of the other altcoins simply don't have. The fact you have speculation, merchant adoption, consumerism, the fact that most development happens on the Bitcoin blockchain, the most mining, the most secure, which incentivizes more investment. I mean, that's a killer one. The proof of work is one of the absolute main attributes of Bitcoin that secures a network, which makes it viable to hold a larger amount of money, which makes it more liquid. Then you have buying begets buying. Like the more liquid and market depth you have in Bitcoin, the fact is a lot of these other altcoins aren't even like the market isn't even deep enough to facilitate bigger investors. And the fact that Bitcoin has the main lead in that area, it means that it's going to be the viable investment for institutional investments coming to this space. And the one thing that I can see happening now is I'm really beginning to look at whether we're going into the early majority on the S-curve adoption timescale, because I would say that up until now, we sort of obviously went through the smart investors, we went into the early investors. I reckon now that we are actually going to begin to enter with the price increase, because obviously speculation is the #1 network effect of Bitcoin. With this price increase, if we can get the early majority coming into Bitcoin, I have to question if we're going to start to have big pullbacks again. Like, I don't think we're going to see a repeat of the 2014, 2015 pullback. I think that was accentuated obviously by the biggest exchange, Mt. Gox, and other things as well. But I can't see us having another 2-year pullback in Bitcoin, even if we ran up to like say 10K now. I'd expect us to have pullbacks because I still think we are in that phase where you do have kind of the secular bull market, a bull market followed by sort of the pullbacks. But the fact is, I think Bitcoin's starting to become a completely different beast. And like the others touched on, the amount of money that still has to come into the space. Even, I mean, I have to nail this point in because there could be a lot of people out there right now looking at the Bitcoin price going, shit, sorry, my language, but like, oh my God, I've really missed the boat here. Now Bitcoin's 3,300. But long term, I'm going to repeat it again. The money, there's $365 trillion in all other major asset classes. So, you know, tradable real estate, commercial real estate, stocks, bonds, narrow currency, gold. Like, there is a colossal amount of money out there with central banks printing $200 billion a month, which is 4 times the current market cap of Bitcoin. I mean, I think as a percentage, it's currently at 0.009% of the total value of all other major asset classes. So even now, the value proposition is still unprecedented. And I think even in 3 years' time, it will still be unprecedented. And if you chuck in the halving as well, oh my God.
What's the sentiment like? I know you work in traditional finance. Actually, you're the only one on the panel, I believe, who does. What's the sentiment looking like right now? Sorry to interrupt, Vinny. Because we've got possible upcoming ETFs and things. You talk about the sentiment. Up until now, you mostly described complete ignorance and pretty much ignorance. So what's I
worked in traditional finance for a short while, a major brokerage called Hargreaves Lansdown in the UK in Bristol. And when I was working there, I worked in a team of like 70 people as an investment consultant. And literally, this is like late 2013 when Bitcoin was just going crazy. And everyone was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, even like head of research was like, what, this is like a fad. And I was just so adamant. I was like, you guys have got to get into this. And I was like really excited that everyone would be like, yeah, wow, look at this. Like, because obviously if you've got quantitative evidence that you've got this brand new asset class rocketing in value, you think everyone's going to look at it and at least take a look at it. I mean, why on earth wouldn't you? Like, maybe it's just me, but when I see something go up fast in value, I'm like, I want to be part of that if it's legitimate. But no one even took any notice of it. And actually, like a few months ago, Hargreaves Lansdown actually, 4 years after I was there, like they said that they're actually going to create an investment vehicle through an exchange traded note for their investors to invest in Bitcoin. But yeah, like I just couldn't believe it at the time. And I spoke to so many people around Bristol who work in traditional finance, and none of them wanted to even know in 2013, 2014, 2015 about Bitcoin at all. And now, obviously, like it's the best performing asset of the last 7 of the last 8 years. It's colossal. It's an absolute powerhouse. I think deep down, these people are probably regretting not taking it more seriously at the time. But that's the thing. And that's, again, going back to Trace Mayer, don't bring your ego into this. Like, I think that's one of the biggest problems with the existing financial system.
So we have 1,000 people watching. I want to at least say something. I think the biggest mistake in my experience going through bubbles and busts and cycles of economies is, first of all, understand that behind these prices and charts are actual people who have psychologies and psychological makeup, and the bubble bust cycle is not gone. I think we need to accept that there will be, I mean, look at the history of Bitcoin. There's always a peak, there's always a trough, and there's always a recovery, and then the next peak is bigger than the previous peak. So if you're saying it's over and this time it's different, I get worried. I think we, you know,
but what if we have hit that exponential, the beginning of it? What if, could that violate that pattern? Like, I'm not saying, I'm not ruling it out that it could have a pullback, but is that a possibility?
It could. It's really about time value of money and velocity, right? So if we go from 3,000 right now to 20,000 in the next 6 months, do you agree that that's a bubble?
It's a massive move. I would expect a lot of profit taking and a pullback.
Now, that would result in a crash, and then it would be a recovery, and I don't know how long that would be. But it's all about the velocity, and I've always been saying this. The faster it goes up, the higher the chance of it being in a bubble state where it has to crash, because people have to buy their Lamborghinis, and they've got to sell Bitcoin for that, right? Just the rest of the world today. We're not living in a world where everything is denominated in BTC. So let's just be cautious about that. Bitcoin, but if it moves too quickly up to a too high a point where it's too much pressure on the system, because remember, there's fiat coming out of the system, there's fiat going into the system. There needs to be some level of balance. We can't expect, $25,000 Bitcoins this year. It's going to be a bubble. Okay, so
it's true.
Can I chip in one last thing? Sorry, go on.
Let me finish. So the one thing I do look forward to is the next bear. But Bitcoin will go through a bull cycle now, and it's in a bull cycle. Great. I don't know what the top is. Not going to call it. It will go through a bear cycle. The good thing about bear cycles is they actually wind up washing out the crap. There are a lot of scams in Bitcoin right now. We're all aware of some of them. There are a lot more than we even know about. People, it's really easy to give people money and play into a Ponzi scheme if the price keeps going up, and you can keep giving everyone joining some sort of dividend or yield because you're just making more money on the Bitcoin because the Bitcoin price goes up. But when the tide comes out and the emperor has no clothes, you see who's swimming naked, basically. That's when the bear cycles are actually very helpful. It's helpful in traditional markets. It's very helpful in Bitcoin. Until we get to the point where the Bitcoin scams are, by the way, these guys are preying on people who do not understand how Bitcoin works. They just see the money keep going up. They're running these silly funds, people putting money in, they're getting returns, everything's good. That has to end, but it only ends when the Bitcoin price goes sideways or down for a while. And I don't know when that's going to be, but it's just the reality of markets.
Yeah, like you've got to pick your times to invest in Bitcoin. Like, obviously 2015 was great. We've been in a big sort of rally now. There's no telling how high it goes, and that's why the one thing, like going back to people saying like about Vinny being an oracle and thing like that, my motto on all of that is listen to everyone, but follow nobody. So, take a whole range of perspectives into account before you make a decision, and never blame anyone for your decisions. Like, at the end of the day, you are completely 100% responsible for every decision you make with your investments. And, Bitcoin is completely brand new. Everybody, like, it's the amount of humility you have every day in Bitcoin is colossal. It's one of the most technical, complex, like assets ever. Like across 7 different areas of learning, and nobody is going to get it 100% right, and that's why it pays to have a wide range of people you follow to get a wide range of views and opinions on what the price is going to do in the short, medium, and long term. And that way you can make informed decisions yourself. But ultimately, everybody is responsible for themselves in Bitcoin. There's no passing of blame, unless obviously you're in like a pay service or something. In that case, you just got to hold them accountable and market forces. But yeah, like that's my number one motto: listen to everyone, follow no one. And I would hate to think that anyone was purely following my advice solely. Like, there are so many good people out there with probably a massive amount more experience than me, but I just do what I think is going to happen. And yeah, that's the way I approach it.
I just want to echo, Vinny's point. One more time. We don't want to go up to 25,000 right now. Like you said, the system. We don't want to overstress the system. Right now, there are people in exchanges working overtime, to try to handle all this BCH stuff, and then the price, coming in. Remember, Coinbase was handling over like 100,000 new users a week. I mean, we can only put so much stress on the system, people, and so we have to grow as slow and steady as possible. And we're going to have spikes, of course, but we have to try to deal with this. And so it's just important that we don't go to the moon too quickly and break the golden goose. So I think excellent points from everybody so far. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add for this topic before we move on? No? Okay, cool. So awesome, guys. Thanks again so much for joining. We have one more topic left to go here. We have over 1,300 live viewers. It's been going up and down between 1,200 and 1,300. We're still getting donations in the chat. So again, thank you guys so much for that. We really appreciate it. If everybody could go ahead and hit the subscribe button for World Crypto Network and give us a thumbs up, we will move on here to the next and final topic. Thanks again, Vinny, for your time, man. I know that.
Can I say about the all highs?
Oh, go ahead, Richard. You had one more
They
point.
are supportable. So when you have a really big move up, you worry about people profit taking and having a bit of a dump. And basically, if the class of person holding has changed, like, so take Ethereum, right? All these idiots are giving their money to teams that haven't done anymore with a PDF. Those teams have their money now. So the people that got scammed, they can't dump because they don't have the coins anymore, right? But the new people, a different class of people with a different incentive structure, is the ICO operator. And the ICO operator has the ability, with asymmetric knowledge of what's going on with his buddies in the space doing the same stuff, to dump or not dump. And they haven't dumped, right? So if you're worried about a 25K jump in a Bitcoin, I don't think you should be, because the same thing happened in Ethereum much faster, 3 or 4 times faster at least, and almost caught up to Bitcoin. And they didn't have huge pullbacks at all, because the people that got the money from the rubes, from the people getting scammed, chose not to dump it. And so they can control that market. And my point is that Bitcoin could hold a massive 25K move up if institutional investors are the ones that bought in, because they have an incentive not to dump. And they probably are pretty good at that whole collusion thing, right? That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely good point. Good point. It all depends on how we get there, right? It depends how we get to the 25K, but I do definitely think we will one day. So let's move on to the final topic. Again, thanks, Vinny, for your time. Thanks, everybody, for your time so far. We're kind of going a little over here. We got an hour and a half so far, so hopefully we can finish up this next topic and then maybe have a question or two for Vinny. So right now, we've seen in the marketplace, just in July, we've seen over $500 million raised in ICOs just for the month of July, making it over $1.6 billion for this year so far. So I want to just ask, Vinny, since we got him here, what is your general opinion on these ICOs with the recent regulation that has come out? Do you think that we're going to see another couple of years of these ICOs? Do you think the ICOs are done? And how is your ICO going with Civic?
Great. Well, thanks. I think I think ICOs and token sales are here to stay. I know everyone has a lot of opinions on SEC rulings, etc. Look, the reality is this: you can run an ICO token sale from Switzerland or Singapore legally, exclude US citizens, and you can raise the money in other parts of the world. If we look at the distribution of people buying our tokens, about a 50-50, and quite frankly, we were so oversubscribed, 300% plus, and we had over $100 million worth of demand on a $33 million ICO. And it was like, look, if we had cut out the US and we said, okay, we're not going to do any US buyers, then we still would have filled it up from other parts of the world. The reality is that we went through a lot of legal pain and procedures to ensure that this was legally compliant and available to everyone in the world to buy. It's not a security, it's a token. It has a smart contract system built into it. And the price today is like 22 cents. We sold it at 10 cents. No discounts to anyone, not even investors. No one internally got a discount. I didn't buy any in the token. So like, we literally kept it very, very strict, very well run, as fair as possible to everyone. We capped buyers. People were asking us for $3 million worth of tokens. We gave them 500K cap, and then they only got cut down to 333K because we gave a third to the crowd sale where there was a 25K cap. We went through a lot of pain to make sure this was a well-distributed token sale. We used the Civic technology, so we had about 10,000 people actually own Civics. So it's very broadly distributed, and there's a cap. So if you look at the market, we've never dipped below the 10-cent price. It's more than doubled. It's very stable. There's no pump and dumps because there's no big shorters coming in because they have to go get the coins and the tokens in the first place. So it's been, for us, it's a very good experience learning and trying to at least lead the way on a very fair sale. Now there are others who have made, some of these token sales have gone badly. People have lost money. There's been scams. It's such a new industry. There's a lot of infrastructural work that needs to be done. People need to have a better way of ensuring that the address that they're sending tokens to is the legitimate address. And people were in our forums trying to scam people and put scammy addresses up, etc. So this is a very, very nascent space. But I think that the trend is clearly there, and I think we're going to see billions of dollars raised next year. And I know a lot of companies now trying to go out this non-traditional route. It is a minefield. There are a lot of mistakes you can make, and the one prediction I'll make is not a price prediction, is that in the next 12 months you are going to see securities going onto the blockchain. 12 to 18 months, and you know what? One of the things we're working on is making sure that you can KYC enable a wallet. So in other words, if you're a US person and you're using a crypto wallet that's got your identity tied to it, that you can send a security from one US person to another, and as long as the KYC comes out clear on both sides, that it's actually regulated and it's okay. So you can actually decentralize custodianship. You don't need to use a centralized custodian to hold your stocks and bonds, etc. So the next 18 months, call it, I think you're going to see more of this happening, and then you're going to see companies going and decentralizing the way that stock offerings work, the way bond offerings work, and make it tradable and tokenized. Now the exchanges need to become compliant and ensure that they can make sure the trading happens between. It's kind of weird because we come from a world where it's all about anonymity and Bitcoin and pseudonymity and making sure that no one knows your wallet and what's in it, and etc. To a world where you can probably have some degree of that, but then in order to trade regulated securities, you have to have your identity tied to that particular wallet. So I think it's going to be an interesting evolution. But for me, this is it was a watershed moment for finance, and I think that you are going to see. The big exchanges be decentralized, in a sense, custodianship be decentralized, and value now accruing to if you look at like Bitcoin and Ethereum and ERC20 tokens as kind of a layer 1 technology, the value doesn't really sit in that layer in terms of like what's a token worth, a fraction of what an ETH is worth, or that's not the value. It's what is it attached to. It's the point that it actually there's secure ownership attached to that token. That's where the value accrues. And so we think about it that way. How does the world evolve going forward? And then the next part is something I wrote about in my last blog post is private economies. How do you issue tokens? How do you create private economies using digital tokens as opposed to fiat currencies? And I can chat about that as well.
Absolutely amazing. We got some feedback. Maybe from John. I'll try to mute. I'm gonna try to mute John. We're still getting some. Maybe it's you, Vinny.
It's gonna be Vinny because he doesn't have a headset.
Oh, sorry. Just mute me.
Yeah, I mean, Vinny. So, thank you, Vinny, so much. That was a lot of great information. I don't even know where to start, so I think we'll go over with John and see what he's got to say next on that, and then we'll move on from there. So, John, do you have any comments directly to Vinny's, and then what do you think about all of these ICOs?
Sure. I'm actually pretty negative on the whole ICO movement. This isn't really something that new. A lot of people think it is, but this is just an iteration of something that Bitcoin has seen before. First we had, the Bitcoin Trust, which was a Ponzi. Then we had this age where we had all these Bitcoin securities where people were actually making real securities on centralized exchanges and taking Bitcoin for them and having shares and paying dividends and all these things. There were bonds, and the SEC shut all that down quietly. And now we've got a new iteration where people are using smart contracts. But the thing I don't like about ICOs is that it's like a really shit deal for the buyer. It basically extracts all of the things that give the buyer value and rights and puts it into sort of like a subway token kind of scheme in order to provide low friction liquidity for large investors and just something for speculators to pump on. But the thing is the designs of these things and the pitches of these things, they don't give the buyer any exposure to appreciation and value of the company that controls the token or the network that they're providing. So it's really a bad deal for them, because what they're doing is they're taking advantage of people's greed and speculative tendencies in crypto, and to get that money from them in order to have loose money for their own causes. But in the end, a lot of times these networks are totally superfluous and unnecessary. We look at the Tyrion token sale was one I looked at a lot, and But looking at the design of it, it actually is designed in such a way that Tyrion will end up probably having to control the price in order to be able to sell its services for a predictable cost. And that means that people that buy that token just wanting it to pump are eventually going to have to be suppressed. And so it's not fair to me to provide somebody a security that isn't a security and say that that's something that's, you know, revolutionary and good. You know, what these people should be doing is providing proper exposure to appreciation of the value of the company and of any network that they create. They definitely shouldn't be making these sort of excuses to have a token for their properties, because the purpose of a blockchain is to mitigate a third party, not to be controlled by one.
Interesting point,
Vinny.
Sorry, Richard. I think Vinny had something to directly say to that.
So look, I agree with John. There are going to be a lot of scam artists out there running ICOs, and they don't understand how to do value to the token as to the company, and how to do extraction out of the corporate structures. I don't think that's true in all cases, though. And I don't want to make this a civic discussion, but I'd love to just give some examples of how we think about things. You know, for example, John, the point about controlling the price. Look, the way that we've designed it is that the money flows into the network in terms of the people who want to purchase services buy it by paying in tokens, but that can be done in real time. So instantaneous transfer. So you know that you're pricing this thing in, you know, $5 in fiat for verification. You can just buy $5 worth of tokens at that point and use that in transferring to the receiver and the validating parties. Now the question would be, well, why do you need to do that? Why can't you use Bitcoin or another payment method? The reason is in identity. When you have a profile that has validation, so in other words, you are a U.S. citizen, and let's just assume the State Department's got an attestation on your profile, the DMV, 3 banks, and 2 other places, your library and your university. When someone's requesting a validation of your information, they're not allowed to know who you are. They should just know that, well, it's a bank grade verification. And so in order to ensure privacy on both ends, we've created a smart contracting system that effectively ensures that you can trust someone who is who they say they are without knowing who's really behind that, and vice versa. And the payments should flow without actually having that lack of trust. And there's a couple other reasons. I won't go into it right now, but we needed to have a smart contracting system. And so the way we look at the company, by the way, is that the company's purpose right now is to it's a Delaware C Corp. We raise all the money through sales of the tokens in the US. We're paying taxes as income. We're not treating it as a security. It's a network utility token. And we've done this, you know, we think in the best way possible. But we also are very well aware of the fact that there could be a rift between the company's goals eventually and the network's goals, right? How do you make sure that the tokens are the values as a token? So the company owns 1/3 of the tokens, and then we have 1/3 left for distribution to partners. And that incentivizes, and that's really helping us build the network. But the long-term view on this is that the company actually ceases to exist at some point in 5, 6, 7, 10 years' time. Who knows? It becomes a non-profit organization. We donate it to a foundation, etc. And the tokens are where the value sits. So maybe it distributes to shareholders or whatever the case is. But we're working on building the civic network in such a way to ensure that the value sits in the actual ecosystem, and the ecosystem acts as a as a self-sustaining hub. So we're building what I call public utilities. We want a utility out there that people can use to do ID verification, and it's got a trust network built into it, and there isn't a company profiting from it. It's just the way the network functions, and other companies can form around the network as well and offer services, etc. So we're doing it very, very differently to the way, and we think about it differently to other people. But I agree with you. There are other people who don't think about it the same way. But
I have some counterpoints there. First of all, what percentage of people do you think bought civic tokens for the purpose of using them to use the civic network versus people who bought it to speculate that it would appreciate in price? I'm sure that it's very, very small, right? You have to agree.
We have a large number of partners who actually bought tokens, and people who are actually going to be using the network.
Why should they expect a civic token to appreciate in price?
Well, why should they expect it, or what is their purpose? I mean, for example, I'll just use one big partner of ours. Their view is that this reduces their KYC costs over many years. So it's purchasing power. So the real question is this: it's not about appreciation of price; it's about purchasing power. Because we're creating a new type of economy here, and we're saying this is the currency that runs that economy. So relative to other currencies, where governments inflate their currencies by high percentages, if the purchasing power of civic tokens just maintains itself because there's zero inflation, There's only 1 billion created. You can,
but if the token doesn't receive dividends, the only reason it would appreciate in price if there's a scarcity of it. And there's no need for there to be a scarcity of a token from a centralized entity providing a service. If this is a subway token, then you want to sell as many seats as possible, don't you?
No, not true, not true. So in the case of a currency, let's say use an example. In the 1980s, South Africa, where I'm from, the gold price was 1,800 bucks an ounce. Okay, the rand was the strongest currency in the world. Why? Because it was the largest producer of gold in the world. You had to buy rands in order to purchase gold because the local producers didn't accept dollars because they had to pay salaries in rands. So that was the functioning currency of the gold economy. And till today, it still is to an extent because you still have to buy rands, but now South Africa is not the only producer of gold. If you create an economy where there's a single, let's just assume that I took the civic servers and I put it onto an island off the coast of Hawaii, and I got a sovereign state declared there, and I said, look, we're not ever going to print money, and we're not going to have a monetary system like the rest of the world. We have a fixed number, 1 billion coins that are going to issue, and if you want to buy ID verification services from us, that's the coin you have to use, and this goes and floats out in the rest of the world. So purchasing power is going to be fixed because those are the only tokens that are out there. And the more people want to buy the services from my country, will have to buy those tokens in order to transact.
So what happens if a civic token becomes, obnoxiously expensive, and then to such a degree that people will have difficulty using your services?
It's purchasing power. Again, the gold price is never fixed in rands. The gold price is fixed in dollars. So you needed rands to buy gold, but the price was always fixed in dollars because it was traded on international markets. So the same thing. So if an ID verification costs $1 and a civic token today is 10 cents or 20 cents, you need 5 tokens today. In a year's time, you may only need 1 token if the price goes up 5x. But it still costs $1 because the bank that's in the US is charging $1.
So this goes back to my point that the price of the actual tokens has to end up being centrally controlled to be devalued in order to match the pricing of the services the company is providing.
No, that's not correct. The price can float in the market because when the company is trying to pay for that one individual purchase, let's assume it's one purchase at one point in time. And now in my account, I've got USD loaded up, and there's an API to an exchange. And now I want to buy one verification. I pay $1, so I buy $1 worth of civics, and that exact same second, I pay it over to the network, which then processes the transaction. So you don't actually have to hold civics; you can just hold dollars. But the reality is if you're holding dollars and there is some sort of price appreciation, the purchasing power of civics stays constant because there's no inflation, there's no fiat inflation. In dollar terms, Edward pointed out, $200 billion a month being printed. So you know that if you're holding fiat, your purchasing power is being inflated every single day and month. If you're holding tokens, they're not because there's only 1 billion of these ever being created, and that's it. It's a fixed supply unit. So that's the way we've modeled it. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense because I don't understand why you need to have the token at all. Civic existed for an entire year at least before it even considered doing an ICO, and it had a business plan and a platform, I assume, that it was implementing and implemented. So I don't see how you can justify going to the ICO route in mid-step and say that it was necessary all along, and then turn this network into some kind of asset that becomes necessary and inject some kind of design that creates some kind of deflationary token to add appreciation where there isn't any.
No, that's not entirely true. So I mean, we've been building the platform for 2 years. There was always a need for a smart contract, and we were always planning on doing some level of ICO token sale. The reality is that the scale of it has changed dramatically this year. Like if you'd asked me a year ago how many tokens would you sell, I would have said maybe $3 to $5 million. That's how much we thought we'd sell initially. We didn't think the market could sustain a bigger number. The fact that we were able to do a lot more because the market grew and could sustain it is just opportunistic. So we took a bigger number. Sure, who wouldn't? But it doesn't mean that it destroys any value that we're trying to create in the place. But I mean, back to your point, because I still don't think that you're understanding the point here. The prices, so because we're running worldwide as a network, someone in the US would charge $1, someone in the UK might charge £2, someone in Netherlands may charge €3. What they want to get paid is fixed. Those are their prices for ID verification. They'll take a different number of civic tokens based upon the market price because they want to cash back out into fiat at any point. So the buyer needs to pay them because they won't accept, the network doesn't accept fiat, it only accepts tokens. So you have to.
So what's wrong with Bitcoin?
Well, the privacy issue, as I mentioned earlier on. So Bitcoin can't make, so if you have a situation where you're using Bitcoin, there's correlation risk because then you can start seeing who's buying verifications, Okay, if you can identify the wallet, then you know.
There's no such thing as Bitcoin taint on the chain. All taint is just external to the chain. Any information about a user is held outside of the chain. So to say that Bitcoin is the problem, it's kind of a red herring in a way.
There's no smart contract in Bitcoin right now.
What do you
There's
need a smart contract for? You're explaining how the need is to convert currencies across the world in order to represent the unit for payment.
But the currency comes from, so look, if you have a situation where the funds are coming from one point to another point, and you know that, for example, you're paying, this bank is buying your ID from this government, and this government's then paying it onto you, there's a trail, right?
But it's still a centralized network, right? Like, you guys are running the thing.
Well, you say you guys, what do you mean?
Civic.
No. So the smart contracts get written, and so the Civic tokens, in theory, someone can go and build another Civic. If you trust that brand, another company, call it whatever, idverify.com, whatever, they can go into this and use Civic tokens to achieve the exact same goals and cut us out of the network. So the network doesn't need us to run. If Civic disappeared tomorrow, as long as you can build a network of buyers and sellers of ID information together, you can run that on the Civic platform and use the Civic tokens to ensure the privacy and control of user information. I mean,
but it's not the token that ensures the privacy, it's the services of Civic that does that.
No, the token does, because the smart contracts are built into the token, and it's a combination of both, because we build the apps that actually control.
Like, for example, I haven't read the white paper. I started to try to read it before I got on here. I thought that I should, and I probably should have. But I think that I saw that Civic is using this as a way to provide privacy or such. But at some point, this has to be kind of rendered, right? Like, somebody has to figure out who the person is, and that person gets ID'd in order to prove a KYC, or that they're allowed to open a certain account or do a certain thing with that account. So somebody has the key to be able to tell who the person is, right? So what happens? So now you have a blockchain for Civic token, right?
No, we don't.
There's no blockchain.
No.
So the transactions aren't tracked.
No, so this is what. So let me give you an example of one example of how this works. So, the Civic app, and you've done your verifications through Civic or whatever company we partner with, your bank, etc. Your verifications sit on your app. The only place that exists is on your app, on your device. It's not on Civic servers. All that we have are the verifications done, your ID information, and then there's hashes published on the blockchain, basically. We've got some hashes.
But no, you have the information too, because the person is verified with you, and you're the one that somebody has to verify that the information on their phone is accurate, right? Somebody has to have voucher.
It gets purged. It gets purged. The information doesn't stay. So the verifications are done, and the information is purged. So we don't store it on our servers.
So you don't store any kind of, so if I send you my ID and all my information, you're not going to store it. So when the government comes and says, hey, we want to see who this person was and verify that this guy did this, show us that this ID is this guy, you're going to say, yeah, we have this hash that proves it. That's good enough.
No, we actually say we don't know who you're talking about. We actually don't know. It's been designed in such a way that if it's been designed to be basically the goal of Civic is to ensure that if any government came to us, they would have to bring their best hackers and cryptographers, and then they would tell the government that it's not possible because we don't store it. Like, literally, we do not have the information.
Okay, so that was a great discussion. I do want to cut that a little bit, because there was a lot of information in there, and I think the audience, the chat, was loving it. I was loving it, but we do got to move on to another topic. So I think that there's some more room and discussion in there, and of course, I definitely encourage everybody to at least check out the white paper for Civic. There is a lot of good information in there, and this stuff does get really freaking complex, dude. It really gets crazy. So I want to move on to Gabriel just to get his so we can move on with the rest of the panelists. Gabriel, you're next. What are your thoughts so far on the discussion so far, and the ICOs reaching 500 million just in the month of July? Are they going to stick around for a while? What's going on? What do you think, Gabriel?
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate both of you guys, Vinny and John. I believe your last name is Carvalho. Is that correct?
Carvalho.
Carvalho, but it's got to
say in Portuguese Carvalho.
Yeah, Carvalho. Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys' conversation on that. I thought the questions were great. I thought the answers were quite interesting, if at times a little bit jibber-jabbery for those of us not versed in the white paper. I'd like to kind of shift the focus of the conversation from the nuts and bolts of the ICO, of the Civic ICO, which I didn't realize it's a non-blockchain token. That's interesting, just a sort of a cryptographic asset that you got there. First of all, I'd like to say just in general on ICOs, I'll just repeat myself for those of you who have not heard my opinion on this. I do believe that there is a place for token creation in the world. And I think that that main focus, in my opinion, my prediction is that DAOs actually will become incredibly powerful and huge in the 2020s. I think that a lot of industries now that are dominated by monopolies such as Google in tech, Amazon in retail, will possibly be replaced by decentralized alternatives, and some of them may be, something sort of living on RSK or colored coins, or even not private, but public tokens that are representing equity in the DAO in a completely decentralized way that regulators would like to stop, but which can't be stopped. So that's my general opinion about this. I'm not seeing hardly any of that in the ICO space now. I agree with the rest of the panelists that have spoken so far that most of them are scams. In fact, nearly all, I'll say maybe 99% of them are scams. I did interview the creator of BitSquare, known as BISC now with a Q, about the DAO that they're doing. I've investigated the white paper pretty closely, and that is more an example of what I'm talking about, where they've got colored Bitcoin that they will be using as a voting mechanism, and it's a sort of incentive-based structure that's completely decentralized and not a pyramid structure where there's any possibility of skimming off the top. So that's kind of an example of that. Now, moving on to specifically Civic, once again, I'm not an expert in your business model. We had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter about a month ago that was rather illuminating. I'd just like to point out, to shift the conversation a little bit from the nuts and bolts and point out the societal and ethical ramifications of Civic's business model. And now, where I agree that I think that it could be a viable business model purely on a profit motive, where you're taking fees from corporations in order to help them track individuals and make sure that people are who they say they are. The problem is that know your customer regulations feed a surveillance state. As far as I'm aware, there's no way around an authoritarian result of know your customer regulations. And currently, to me personally, this is a subjective opinion that I hold, it's quite transparent to see that governments around the world, including the United States, the United Kingdom, certainly India, utilize these regulations in order to maintain knowledge and control over the citizenry with which they cannot be trusted. They haven't proven themselves to be trustworthy. So you're attempting to create a company that can sort of sidestep this issue, but if your whole business model depends on upholding the know your customer regulatory infrastructure, then you are feeding into the fleshing out, penetration, and strengthening of know your customer regulations. And you spoke about issuing regulatory, issuing securities which comply with securities regulation around the world. And I don't actually believe that there is that much of a future for it. However, it may be for the next 5 years, but I'm of the strong opinion that financial regulation of that type will be one of the first casualties of the crypto money wars that are to come, where governments simply don't have the budget to pay for anything but the essentials for government, like defense. Something like securities regulators would be on the chopping block very early on as governments collapse, large nation-state governments collapse around the world. However, you guys might be able to pivot to a more private identity scheme, a private identity providing scheme to where you're more focused on corporations. But I believe that corporations and government are relatively the same entity at this point, considering most nation states are completely fascist in organization, where they're working together with banking infrastructure on the exact same governance scheme. So in that sense, I'm very skeptical about the ethical implications of Civic. And I'd like to warn everybody in the world about participating in know your customer and so-called anti-money laundering schemes. Be careful which infrastructures you're feeding into, because it could come back to bite you in the ass when you lose freedoms. And we're already seeing that around the world, especially in places like India, where they're moving so quickly forward with demonetization and many policies which are designed quite clearly to draw off wealth from the populace as fast as possible. So
well, yeah, that's why I like, that's why I do like Civic and these platforms where you can keep your own identity, where you own the private key. You own the private key to all of your identity. There's like literally, Civic doesn't store any of this on their server, so you literally own the private key.
Civic doesn't, but the corporations that they work with do.
Yeah. Sorry.
And so if you are an NSA, then you have access to all of that data, and it's absolutely trivial. You don't need world-class hackers to just collate all the databases, clients of Civic.
Gabriel, it's already there. That's the whole point. So with Civic, you're extracting it out of there. You're putting it into a place where you control it, and then you can choose who to give it to, who not to give it to. And then the next phase of evolution here is how do you move the stuff to secure places like IPFS, where companies get forced or realize that the only way they can access your information is going through a secure vault which you're in control of the data. They write to that vault, and when you cut them off, they can't access the data anymore. That's where we want to get to with Civic. We want to get to the point where you're in control of your own information.
Are you sure that this is not just an illusion of control? If
I want to play. Can I play?
Yeah, well, hold on, Richard. If there are monopoly players in the corporate space and you are forced, in other words, not forced, but in the sense your only choice is to give up your identity to these massive corporations, in effect, you are just greasing the rails for their existing surveillance state. You're not actually giving power to human beings in that situation.
How are you forced? I mean, are you with or without Civic, or give me an example?
In a situation where you want to use a service where there's an existing monopoly, in that sense, you would be forced to go if they only use Civic as an identity platform, you would, I mean, obviously you're not forced to want to use it, but if you want to use it, then you have no other choice, for example, than to use your service in order to get into this database. It's just feeding into a paradigm of...
Let's look at a different way. So when you open up an account with an exchange, they want your passport, they want your driver's license, they want all this information about you, right? That you don't really need to, I mean, you shouldn't have to give all the information. What happens if you get a lot less than that? Let's give an example in the UK. They're putting up these laws around adult sites and porn sites, whatever else. You have to be over the age of, I think, 18 or whatever, 21, whatever it is. And now you have to age verification when you go to these sites. So you have to pull out your UK driver's license. It has your address on it, has all your personal information. Wouldn't it be easier just to say, well, I'll authenticate through Civic and I'm over 21 and Civic will assert that.
That's precisely my point. It's much easier to participate and strengthen the KYC surveillance state infrastructure. And I want to hear what Richard has to say.
But hold on, but in that point, you're just saying I'm over 21. You're not giving any personal information. So what would you prefer? Would you like to rather give your driver's license or passport information to verify who you are versus just saying that I'm over 21?
Oh, I would prefer a completely decentralized identity where you get to create them at will and create and that aren't tied to your real world identity in any way.
Okay. Well, that's going to be tough, Gabriel. But Richard, please, I know you're jumping out of your skin, man. So let's go. Let's see what your comments are.
There's this cool old saying that says that it's very hard to convince a man of a thing that upon his understanding will cause him to lose his job. Right? So if a guy launches an ICO, you will never, ever, 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 ever explain to him why he didn't need his token and why it was a bad idea. This shit ain't never going to happen. So you're just going to get blue in the face talking about it. It's never, ever happened. Right? So particularly even if people don't like when you attack their businesses in general, right? So first, it's very easy to write a very long white paper full of bullshit that no one can understand or disprove. And then when people get into arguments with you about it, it seems like you won the argument because they didn't address the 57 different facets of your bullshit machination business, right? Your Deus Machina fucking Rube Goldberg machine that no one can possibly say won't work because there's just bullshit leveled upon fucking buzzwords. So it basically, who has the onus of convincing someone that there's not a teapot floating out in space, right? Put the onus on all of us to know everything that exists in space, or you could put the onus on the guy saying silly shit, right? So if you say your ICO is worth money, guess what? Your ICO has real competitors and a real market cap that's known. Okay, selling identification is a business that already exists. It is already sold to the people that he mentioned. When you go to verify with an exchange, they outsource that verification. When you go to rent a car, like with one of your little apps, they outsource that verification. And so charging a very small fee per verification for a new client sign up is something that's already done for exchanges, for anyone that is worried about losing money to their counterparty that's renting a car, or fucked up by the government for not being AML. So the concept that a bank would be able to sign away its AML KYC regulations by saying, oh, that guy did it. He had an app. The app said it was okay. All those motherfuckers would be put out of business like immediately, right? You can't just sign up. Like if the government comes and says you have to, and you go, oh, well, decentralized blockchain app that doesn't even have a company address right over there. No, like this shit does not work, right? So one, the proof that your ICO works is on the ICO guy. I don't have to deep bullshit. You have to prove why you don't actually already have a real competitor, why what you're doing isn't actually new, why it wouldn't work better without a token, right? And so next, you shouldn't be able to vote on a blockchain with proof because then people will sell the proof. It's the reason you don't get a fucking receipt now, okay? Look up a guy, big Bitcoin supporter guys, has something called brown box voting reform. If you start giving people receipts for they voting a certain way, there's going to be a fucking market for turning those little cryptographic receipts into money, okay? And then you can kiss your fucking fair elections even farther goodbye. Even Citizens United ruling made it hard to get giving people the ability to sell their votes with cryptographic proof. Holy shit, you can kiss your voting goodbye fucking entirely. Like we're going to turn voting into a, an ATM machine. You're going to get a receipt. That's the opposite of good. Okay. Next, surveillance system. It don't work that great, right? The reason surveillance doesn't work right now is because it's too hard to review the footage. You could have a camera shoved in every corner of every place in the world, but until AI is good enough to recognize crime when it's happening, you just get videos of people doing bad shit. Usually blurry, unusable videos of people doing bad shit. So you don't really have to worry about the surveillance state being a problem or being useful until AIs and pattern recognition is good enough that watch the footage, right? Any of you guys that got cameras in your house, tell me how many minutes you've spent watching the footage. Right? Unless you had a really cool party and there was just one cool thing that you wanted to see. What else? Oh, like you said that defense is like a core thing that a country has to have. Defense is an insurance. You don't have to have it. If your neighbors are nice, you don't have to protect yourselves from them, right? There's a lot of countries that have extremely low to almost none in defense. I think Costa Rica is one of them. And nobody's coming over their borders, right? I don't think that it's bend on insurance in the form of defense.
Yeah, and so a lot of good points there, Richard. Since you did bring up voting, the chat wants to know Vinny's opinions about civic and voting. So go ahead, Vinny. Well, first, Vinny, if you want to respond to anything that was said, and then after that, your thoughts on voting with the blockchain and civic and such.
Well, but by responding to Richard, I'd probably wind up validating him because, it would put me on the defensive, so I'm not going to respond to him. So regarding voting, I mean, that was the real genesis for Civic. Civic was built to be a system that could use blockchain technology to enable voting worldwide so that you could be in control of your vote. You could vote from a mobile phone. You could place your vote, and it would be secure and come from your own home. I'm from Africa. I was born without a vote. Like I was born in apartheid South Africa, 1979, and you know, if you look at how in 1994 when Mandela was elected president, people stood outside for days, 3-4 days. They couldn't even afford like food. Like they should be working those days. They stood up to vote because it was so important to them that the country changed and democracy was upheld. But you also had a lot of intimidation. You had a lot of, throughout Africa, you still have this today. It's very, voting is a very contentious issue. You have to have recounts. We have that in America. We have, you know, accusations of voter tampering, etc. Blockchain solves this problem really, really well. But I spent a ton of time speaking to regulators and people in, you know, in legislation around this. The reality is that they are never going to implement a voting platform that is decentralized on a mobile phone for maybe a decade, 7 to 10 years, until they're comfortable that they can remotely identify who the person is. So that's their biggest issue. And you can check them yourselves, and you can have this problem government saying, well, if we don't know who's on the other end of the phone, we can't have the vote, and we're not going to have the vote happen. So we set out.
Why would you want to help them? Why would you want to help them do that?
You don't want democracy?
Probably not. No, not on that scale, because it's far too. It enables far too much fraud at the high scale. So I mean, the large nation states are incredibly terrible for individuals.
We'd rather have people in Africa and Zimbabwe going to the polls to vote under threat of being shot, injured, having their kids taken away from them.
No, I'd rather they had villages and you know, a couple of guys with guns to protect, you know, the village, and they have a vote in a room with slips of paper.
Why don't you use some of your Bitcoin to go help those poor people in Africa? I mean, have you ever been to Africa, Gabriel?
No. I think this is for everybody, not just Africans.
No, I'm talking about everyone as well. I'm saying that you need to look at the people at the bottom end where democracy is not there at all. We have some semblance of democracy in the Western world and in the developed world. And undeveloped worlds, democracy is a lot less fragile.
I think we need to be a little more realistic about what identity can do for all of this. I mean, there's a reason why there's friction in identity. You know, there's a reason why a lot of times people resort to visual identification and won't ever go to something like a hash that's been verified by someone before, or a token. You know, even when you look at exchanges, a lot of services, banking services now, it's not good enough just for you to send your ID. You have to send a picture of you holding your ID. I was talking to someone yesterday, his credit card company wanted to send a picture of him holding his ID along with holding a piece of paper that had today's date on it and the name of the company written on it. You know, there's a lot that's going into making sure somebody is verified. And when you remove friction from the verification process, you do also make it easier for people to circumvent things like that. You'll have people selling IDs, you'll have people sharing their token with other people to be able to do something. You can't really do too much automation when it comes to the side from the provider, the business provider.
So, and you guys believe that doesn't happen today? You don't have fake physical IDs, you have fake IDs. Like,
oh, of course you do, but that's my point, is that the friction is increasing, it's not decreasing. And to say that we can remove all this friction and turn it into a hash is a tricky proposition, don't you think?
It's not just a hash. So remember that the whole point of networks is that you want to have even though the error rate may only be, let's just say it's a fraction of a percent, 25 basis points. It's a lot better than the world we live in today, where it's multiple percentage points. And I mean, if you look at fake IDs, it's one of the biggest things purchased with Bitcoins on Silk Road, right? People buy a lot of fake and stolen IDs and passports.
But is it harder to buy a civic identity than it is to make a fake passport?
Harder to buy in what sense?
In other words, you're saying that people can fake IDs, but faking an ID isn't exactly easy. There's some friction to it, right? And now they're adding new friction for ways to prove.
They have to have your device. They have to have your device. They have to cut your finger off and be able to use Touch ID or whatever.
I mean, a device is digital. A device can be replicated anywhere.
Well, so okay, how are you going to do this? So how are you going to do this selfie, for example? On if we say
so people have to do a selfie every time they use their civic ID.
If the person relying on the use of that ID at that point in time wants it, then they can request it. Yes.
So we're back where we started.
Well, except that you can control what information is disseminated. You have to hold your whole driver's license up there. You could just have a selfie and match it against the what's on file.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, the provider, the person you're interacting with, is ultimately going to dictate the degree of security in IDing you. You know, there's only so much that Civic or any identity platform can do to kind of speed things up or make things have less friction.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole point is, look, we're not going to solve these problems in I'm not going to solve problems 7 years from now today. We're going to start very slowly by solving real world problems that we can deal with right now today and make it easier for people to be in control of the information. Again, the whole point of this is you could argue any way you want. You're in a government database. We're all in government databases. The information's already out there. How do you slowly give control back to people so they can control where the information goes to and how it's validated? If you want to live off the grid, that's fine. Go live off the grid. Go live on an island somewhere. Go live in an anarchist world. But if you're living on the grid where you need bank accounts, you want to have access to exchanges, you want to do stuff.
I have Bitcoin. Why do I need a bank account?
But Gabriel, you want to go through?
I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. Also, do I need a selfie stick to use Civic?
No. But
No.
let me give you guys one example, okay? If you could use Civic to go through airports without having to carry passports and visas and driver's licenses, would that be valuable to you?
It all depends on how much freedom I have in that situation.
I think the problem with airports is getting the finger in the butt, not so much the shit.
I think one thing that's important to think about here is, for me, I see all the value in Civic as being value to the businesses, not to the end user. You know, what I like about identity is providing a way for individuals to silo their information amongst different, use cases. This is my viewing porn ID. This is my I'm a professor ID. This is my family ID, etc.
Yeah.
But all these examples end up being something that sound like more of a pitch to a bank or I'll give you an example. I spoke to you a few months ago on Twitter. I said, I'd really love for a way to have people be able to say that they're 18, to prove somebody's 18 without knowing anything about them. But the problem is that's for my website because I want people to come to an adult website. But that actually provides more restriction for the user side. That means that right now, all they have to do is click a button and say, I'm 18. And they can get into a website. But if we have a situation where now somebody has to have a Civic ID, this is the point Gabriel was making earlier, where somebody has to have a Civic proven 18 ID to be able to get into a website. Now less people can get in, and they have to go through more trouble to be able to do it. The benefit is more for the website or for the government making the regulation than it is for the user.
But hold on, if the regulation's already being put in place, like in the UK, where you have to now ask your users on your website for a driver's license, a photograph of the driver's license, or if you have a Civic account, just validate that you're over 18. What would you prefer, and what would they prefer?
They still have to do it. They're not. Civic isn't going to be able to circumvent that regulation either. You're still going to have to ask for the ID.
No, but that's the whole point. We can validate that they're over 18 without giving you the personal underlying information on that person.
What's the difference between me giving a fake ID to the door guy at the bouncer and me giving a fake ID and then giving my faked Civic ID to the door bouncer? Like adding an extra layer of abstraction in between the fake ID with your photo on it and the actual person that receives that shit. Like putting Civic in the middle, it doesn't stop you from getting faked. Like anyone that is on the Civic network improperly verifying IDs, like there's nothing that Civic can do to make someone not like if someone verifies an ID improperly or is sold by fake ID, there's nothing Civic can fucking do about that. So like it's
that's not exactly true.
Doesn't make any sense.
That's not true. So how would you get a fake ID?
How you get, if I put a fake ID in your system that says that I'm actually like a 10-year-old girl, what you gonna do about that?
Well, it's actually improvement on the way you look today. But
damn! Oh snap! My soul! You broke me.
For example, you look in Civic. If you have a verified account, you have to have a social security number. So does the social security number match?
Yeah, but everybody that has a fucking social security number in America that's an illegal, you can just make a social security number. You can pull it out of your ass. You can go online and generate one. Like I don't want to shit talk your business, but like it's
no, we look at the public records and we go, okay, well you live at this address, so we'll send you a postcard to the address. You get the postcard, type in the code.
Okay, so homeless people can't get Civic tokens, right?
No, then
immigrants can't get Civic tokens. Well, hold on. You just said it. If you can check my ID.
Well, check it out. Let me let's go to Edward on this. But real quick, I do want to say this: that look, you guys, you have to understand too that we are early days in this technology, right? I mean, he's clearly Vinny's not trying to solve every single problem in the world. We have to start somewhere, and this is a great place to start, I think. So let's go to Edward and see what he thinks. But yeah, I mean, I just think that people just overestimate technologies. They did it with Bitcoin too. They just overestimated it in the first couple of years and completely underestimated it, 5, 10 years later. And so I think that's what we're trying to do here, you know, and that's what Vinny's trying to do, is think about the future here. We're not trying to change the whole world today, right? We're trying to build a path to something better. And so we have to build that step by step. But I want to hear Edward's opinion on this, Edward. So what do you think so far, man, on this conversation and ICOs in general so far? And ICOs kind of taking off continuously, because, you know, Vinny said that he doesn't see ICOs going away anytime soon. So what is your opinion on this and the situation so far?
Yeah, so when it comes to ICOs, I'm a free market person, so if somebody wants to create a market in a token, I think they should have the ability to do that. And then let the market judge for itself whether it's viable, whether it has longevity, or whether it's good. And I think everyone could take a leaf out of John's book in terms of actually doing your due diligence on what you're investing in. You know, like, there's probably a lot of terrible ICOs out there. There may be some that do have value proposition. But again, do your due diligence. Like, what's the team behind it? Are they good? Do they have longevity? What's their past? What have they worked on before? All of these different things that I've talked about in the past, just to work out, you know, what are the currency attributes, those types of things, to work out whether it's a viable investment in the long term. In terms of the regulation as well, because obviously a lot of people have talked about the regulation of ICOs, and I really don't want to see that. I want to see all the ICOs regulated through the free market. So in the free market, the way you regulate anything is through education, reputation, and social ostracization. And so it'd be great to see like some kind of database of references, or, you know, you can search through for everyone who's ever participated in the ICO, how it worked out. I think that would be great at doing like due diligence to see who's starting the next ICO, what their past is, have they created one before, how did that work out? So there's like, yeah, there's like a ton of different ways that you could actually have self-regulation of the ICO market to see which ones are probably viable or not. In terms of like identity, I personally believe that in the long run, I know everyone the only one that thinks this, but are there going to be changes to the Bitcoin network that's going to make any attempt to identity just mute? Like, is there going to be something that comes out that just prevents it at the core level? I mean, I really don't know. That's why I'm going to ask, but I don't know. There's going to be some kind of like amazing developments that are actually just going to make any attempt to identity mute.
Yeah, digitally. So basically, anytime you touch the real world, your like fantasies of cool inventions are fucked, right? As soon as you touch the real world, someone else can intervene and break whatever system you created, right? We're gonna have this really cool project, it's gonna do these really cool things, and then someone smacks your vendor and steals his pizza, and then your pizza delivery app doesn't work anymore, right? So if you stay digital, you can do fancy shit. You can do smart contracts if they only touch the digital world. You can do obfuscation, zero knowledge proofs. You can do multi-sig. You can do quorums. You can do all types of amazing stuff as long as it stays digital. As soon as you touch the real world, you are fucked, because the real world doesn't care about the logic that you programmed into your system. The real world is not predictable, and the power goes out and the internet goes out, and, you know, corporate takeovers happen and people get shot, and, you know, so basically there's a lot of fancy cool stuff that can revolve around Bitcoin, as long as it doesn't touch an oracle or the real world or the bouncer at the door that you know, you don't realize that the girl that you came with got caught stealing shit out of purses. So he doesn't tell you why you're not getting in, but you come back the next day and you're like, oh, that girl steals shit, I didn't know, right? So that's that.
Well, we'll end it with any final remarks from Vinny. We'll have, and then I think we'll have to end it. We've been going a long time here, almost 2.5 hours. So, Vinny, any final thoughts on ICOs and the discussion so far?
Look, I think it's kind of funny that some of the most open-minded people in the world in the crypto space are against looking at new ways of doing things, and I agree that it's a free market. So let people experiment, let them try it. You know, if it fails, it fails. If people lose their money, they lose their money. It's like, this is the kind of funny thing. The guys who are anti-government are saying, "Well, this stuff needs to stop," and I think we should be a little bit more open-minded about where this can go. And the answer is none of us knows where it's going to go. And the real question is, can you put you know, like, capital formation is changing. You've got a lot of people around the world who've got capital in countries. Like, I could never invest in US companies when I lived in South Africa. I didn't have a social security number, but now you have ICOs which make it possible. So now you have money which has been trapped in countries and oppressive governments around the world, like being filled out. How many people on this panel have actually lived under an oppressive regime? Like, Like
Not me.
and forced to do.
I'm in the UK. Is that clear?
But forced to live in segregated housing areas. I mean, like when I lived in South Africa and part of the area, I was like, this is the Indian areas. Indian people live here. The black people live here. The colored people live here. The white people live here. Like that's how I grew up. Okay, and that's Africa. And that was, it was a long time ago. But I've had the perspective of living under that oppressive government, and then Mandela's government, and then a couple other ones that followed in South Africa, and then under the U.S. government, Obama and now Trump. Like I've got a perspective on the world which is a little different to I think most people, because I've had to go through a lot of shit in my life. And so I can tell you now that as much as I want to be the total crypto anarchist that says fuck the government, fuck the rest of the world, this is how we should live, I think there's a balance that needs to be struck, because not everyone has got the same level of intellect or insight that we do in the crypto space. And so you've got to be a little bit more cognizant of some people. They need structure. They need some level of government infrastructure in their lives. Otherwise, they mentally would break down. Like literally, you have no idea. Some of these people are like, South Africa right now has become a social welfare state where people, if the government disappeared tomorrow, they don't know how to make money. They live off basically government handouts. And that's just the way the world is. It's not going to change tomorrow. Now, we can try and push the forefront of what we're doing, and we can try and make the world a better place, but it's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. It's going to happen in, decades. And so it's good that we're thinking openly about how this can work, but we should also be a little bit more appreciative of the fact that we have no idea of how things are going to play out in 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years from now. Black swans may occur. So let's just see and let's just experiment. And failure is good. So it's good to fail. It's good to go out there and try things that doesn't work. We learn from those failures and move forward. And I think society as a whole is moving forward and in a positive way. I think all the charts that I tweeted something from Elon Musk yesterday, which he tweeted out from Sam Altman, and you look at stuff from Hans Rosling, the world is a better place. Every decade, every 15, 20 years, it becomes a better place. So let's just keep trudging along. We can have differing views of opinion, but let's just be respectful that we just don't know what the outcomes are going to be, and we should give each other the bandwidth to experiment.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more, Vinny. I mean, this is a whole new world here. I like to call it a global financial renaissance that's kind of happening everywhere. I mean, this is everybody's experimenting with this new technology, with blockchain, with Bitcoin, and this stuff is, in my opinion, it's going to move fast. But when I say fast, that still means playing out over decades. I mean, when we look at the changes relative to what's happened in the past, I mean, it took hundreds of years before new things came along. Now with this current where we're at now with the internet and with Bitcoin, I mean, things are moving fast. So we're trying to change the whole world here, within the next few decades. And I think that that's possible. But again, like Vinny said, we have to keep open minds on this stuff and let the market decide. Let people experiment and let this go on. I'm all for it. I love all the experimentation. I, of course, do believe that it's going to be only Bitcoin in the end and then many layers on top of that. But I am all for all of this experimentation, and I absolutely love it. And I'm just super excited to see what comes out tomorrow and the next day. It's what gets me up every day, to find out what the hell happened now. What happened next in crypto? You never know. It's the greatest reality show ever, and this has just been amazing. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Vinny, thank you so much for your time, man. I know you didn't have a whole lot of time, but you gave us 2.5 hours, man. I can't appreciate that enough. Thank you so much, Vinny. You had so much good stuff to say, and I think if people, rewind this tape, watch it again, you will see there is a lot of good information in here. There is a lot of great stuff. I'm absolutely proud to have this information being put out on the WCN. So guys, thanks so much again. Maybe we'll try to get Richard to talk not quite as much as the Sailor next time, but we love all of the good stuff that's coming out. So guys, thanks again so much for joining us. We're going to be back again. We had almost 1,360 viewers at the height. We had donations. We have people talking in the chat. The chat's flying by so fast. So I had a great time. Guys, we're going to be back again in 2 weeks. Or actually, I'm sorry. You know what? I am taking a break next. So in 2 weeks, instead of having another show, I will take that week off. I have family coming into town, so it will be about a month before the next show. We do the show every other Sunday, so we are going to skip a beat next time and come back right after that. So, but of course, the WCN will have tons of content. We have the Today in Bitcoin, with Thomas and Tone and Jimmy Song. Everybody's been loving that. I've been loving that. So we've been having great coverage. We're going to have a lot more coverage and a lot more shows to come. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back. Just until then, man, guys, keep talking Bitcoin and keep staying excited. Let's do it. Changing the world. Until next time, guys.